I'm going to call to order the February 11th, 2019 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin with an invocation given by myself, the mayor, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you can. Before I give my invocation, I thought it prudent that we give a little bit of respect in a moment of silence for John Dingle, a representative from this region who fought tirelessly on behalf of our state, the auto industry, and as well as clean water, Medicare, and the list goes on. John understood that he worked for many different administrations from both parties. He was able and always willing to find common ground among people, and he held an office and held a career that all of us should aspire to have. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The invocation for this evening. Let us take a moment and offer thanks for the blessings we enjoy living in a vibrant, welcoming city of progress. We are grateful for the dedicated professionals and volunteers that make our quality of life possible. We give thanks to our women and men in uniform who help keep us safe and sound. We ask for the well-being and safety of all those who serve the city of Royal Oak. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. This brings us to item number 4, which is the proclamation designating March 18th, 2019 as Amphibian Conservation Awareness Day. And we have a proclamation to the mayor of Amphibiaville, Ms. Babaza. Come join me down here. Mayor, how are you? I'm doing well. Well, for those of you who don't know, Mayor Babaza is the mayor of Amphibiaville, right across the way at the Detroit Zoo. She's been doing a great job being a steward and a voice for our amphibians. And I'm here to read a proclamation in honor of the work that she's done, and to also designate March 18th as Amphibian Conservation Awareness Day. Whereas, according to Amphibian WROK, a joint effort of 3 principal partners, including the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature Species Survival Commission, Conservation Planning Specialist Group, and the IUCN SSC Amphibian Specialist Group, and the Amphibian Survival Alliance, 30% of the 6,285 amphibian species assessed are threatened with extinction. And whereas 6% known to be near threatened and 25% are deficient, 3,900 species are in trouble. And whereas 165 amphibian species are believed to have already gone extinct, including 39 known to be extinct or extinct in the wild, but still survives in captivity, and 130 not found in recent years and are possibly extinct. Whereas we can make a difference in the lives of our local amphibians by cleaning up and sustaining our local wetlands, and to acknowledge the efforts of the Detroit Zoological Society Mayor of Amphibiaville, Trinity Favaza, to bring awareness to amphibian and wetland conservation within our city and our state. Now therefore, be it resolved, I, Mayor Michael Fournier, and the members of the Royal Oak City Commission hereby proclaim March 18th, 2019 as Amphibian Awareness Day in Royal Oak, Michigan, and encourage our residents to reflect on the ongoing struggle for the amphibian conservation and celebrate the contributions that enhance our city's wetlands. Mayor? Well, it means a lot for all your efforts. Thank you for looking out for our amphibian friends. Thank you. brings us to item number 5, which is the City Employee Service Awards. Mr. Johnson, shall you escort me? Now, we have a lot of veterans in this city, but we have a couple individuals that have made it through their first year. Mr. Johnson, I can hand the awards if you want to say a few words.
This is something new that we've started doing. And when we're recognizing employees, it isn't always necessarily those that are at the 30-year point. In this case, we've got 2 relatively new employees, James J. Dunstan, James, and Adrian Z. Bresnow. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay. James? These are 2 new employees. Adrian's in the library. James is in the city clerk's office. I see James on a regular basis, and I know Melanie's very, very pleased with his work. And I know that Adrian is well thought of by both Mary and the new head librarian shortly, Emily Dumas. Also might mention that James is the son of Jay Dunstan, who is sitting here in the second row, our DDA chairman.
We don't hold that against you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for choosing a career in public service. It's not always easy. Somebody's got to do it. And really appreciate and hope you have a very long career here in the city of Royal Oak. So thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. So,
Clerk does have a sheet for anybody that doesn't hear about the sidewalks that doesn't necessarily want to speak.
Sure.
They can just sign in and beg before.
Okay.
And still protect our rights.
So, by show of hands, who's here to protest their sidewalk assessments? Okay, we have an idea here that might make things go a little smoother. So, first off, we do have a sign-in sheet here. If you don't want to come and protest at the podium and go to public comment, you might be a little shy, you don't want to talk about it, we have the opportunity for you to mark your information, and that will count as, the fact that you either wrote a letter or you came up here. So for some people I know, they might not want to get in front of the broader audience. So right here, if you want to come up, our clerk, Melanie Hallis, does have a sign-in sheet, so you get full credit for protesting the assessment if that's the path you choose. We're also thinking to make it easier for us to keep track. What we'll do is we'll do public comment for all items that don't relate to the sidewalk protest, and then what we protesting the assessment. And then when we get to the item, which is the second item on the agenda, then we'll ask you to come up, and it'll be easier for us to keep track if you wish to do it at that time. So is there anybody that has strong opposition to that plan? Okay, good. So we're going to kick off with public comment. This will be for all things except for the sidewalk assessment discussion, of which, if you wish to talk about that, and you are a property owner, and you wish to talk about your property and discuss that assessment, same rules of public comment will apply, and we'll open it up at that time. So, notwithstanding that, this is the City Commission values and relies on the input of our fellow citizens to make decisions. Now is the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on all city-related issues, both on the agenda and not. As there are no public hearings scheduled for tonight's meeting, this will be the only time for you to address the public, for the public to address the City Commission, with the exception that I just made. If you're here to talk about sidewalks, then when we get to that agenda item, prior to discussing it, we'll open it up. I ask that your comments be directed to the City Commission and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight, either at public comment or at the sidewalk assessment discussion, please wait until recognized by me, the mayor. come up to the podium. For the record, you'll state your name and address. Please be mindful that the City Commission wants to hear from everyone who wishes to speak tonight, so comments are limited to 3 minutes or less, and we have a timer here to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, please don't hesitate at any time to email or call the City Commission with your comments. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes and will address the questions when the agenda topic is discussed or refer it to the proper city department if the matter isn't scheduled to be discussed this evening. So, who's first? I saw a hand right here on the end go up first. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thanks for calling me first. David Baldwin, 2725 Main Street. So I just briefly want to talk about accountability, just a few notes, and I'll get right into it. In simple terms, city officials are responsible in their roles to serve the residents. It's not the other way around. The city is, the subjects, the people of the city are not subjects in a fiefdom to be lorded over.
Can't hear you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
The city lot public land giveaway is an example of self-interest acts by city officials as opposed to having the community interest being taken into account. That's one example of recent self-interest being taken into account over community interest. Another item, another area is no bid contracts. The city charter requires competitive bidding on contracts. We need open and competitive bidding in order to ensure that taxpayer funding is used effectively and ethically. So I encourage people in the city, like myself and the people here and others watching, if they are watching, to continue to hold and pay attention to the actions of our city officials and continue to be ourselves responsible in keeping our city government accountable. In short, Royal Oak is not a fiefdom, and we need to continue to act on our responsibilities to hold our officials accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Who's next? Mr. Karlowski.
Evening, Rick Karlowski, 419 Virginia. First off, in the spirit of the Amphibian Day on March 15th, just to let you know, there is a family of toads that's very happy at the Orson Star House by the garage. March 15th might be a little bit early for them, but if you come around June, mess around in the hostas and you will certainly find them. They're happy to oblige. On the other topic I have here today is with regards to the overcharge for the parking structure. First off, I don't know how you write a contract without all the drawings done, all the necessary stuff in, and then have a contract maximum that's not a maximum. I can understand if this city came in and said, well, we want to change the brick, and their brick was really originally there, was originally A, and now it's B, and it's going to cost a little bit more. That I understand. That's not the case here. We've got charges in here for, well, we don't have the right kind of dirt. Well, I'm sorry, you're a contractor. Dirt's dirt, all right? If we made the change, that's our problem. We aren't making a dirt change. That should have been part of the bid. It should have been part of the maximum part, and we should not be charged and paying extra for it. Most importantly, from what I'm reading from the minutes, this is already money that's already been spent. So, explain to me how this city can spend money prior to the city commission authorizing it. I will tell you, in private industry and General Motors, if I would go ahead and spend $600,000 and then tell my boss, well, you got to pay it, we already spent it, I'd be walked out the door. I don't understand how we have a bureaucracy that is allowed to spend $600,000, and basically that's what you're saying. Well, we already spent it. You guys are just here to rubber stamp the check. Because what if you guys vote no? Are you going to stop construction on the parking structure? This is ridiculous, folks. I don't know how you guys do business, because this is not the way it's done in the outside world. And finally, there was a comment last time about, well, we get twice the tax money back to the investment we made in the Bogie building. Well, there's $12.7 million in a personal guarantee of which there's no bond for. But I would like anybody here to tell me when the general fund, which paid the $5.5 million in cash, gets its money back. I don't care what the DDA gets. Okay, the DDA is not plowing my street, not fixing my streets, not adding park equipment, not cutting the parks, not paying for police. So when you guys start saying, well, we're getting twice their money back, yeah, maybe, but not to the general fund that paid for it up front. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krajewski. Who's next? Mr. Ashley.
My name is Alan Ashley. I live at Royal Oak Manor. What I would like to do, I know you can't put it on the agenda for today, but I wish you would put it on the agenda for next week, is to lower the parking for seniors. It once was $25, and you raise it to $45 for seniors to park across the street. Yes, that doesn't seem a lot of money to you, but when you live on a fixed budget, as we do, with a minimal of 2% raise, then we get 4% raise in medical insurance, 6% raise in prescriptions. We are now sitting in a hole, and we now just got at Royal Oak Manor a raise in our rent, anywhere from $18 to $40 for our rooms. So this $45 adds more. If you can reduce it back to $25, that might pay for a meal or prescription that will save a life. But this is ridiculous, charging seniors on fixed budgets $45 to park in a parking that we have to cross Main Street and railroad tracks to park in. That is ridiculous. And just remember that the seniors are the largest voting group coming up this election, and there is an election this year. So I wanted to remind you that seniors do count. And if you say, well, Royal Oak Manor doesn't pay taxes. Last year, we paid over $126,000 in taxes through the city of Michigan, through the state of Michigan. So we do pay taxes to this city. So I wish you would take us under consideration and be a favor, since you've been handing out favors for a long time. Hand out a favor to seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashley. I see a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am, with the glasses on. Yes.
Hi. I'm Pamela Lindell, 409 Inglewood Avenue. Yes, the same Lindells as John Lindell Ice Arena is named for. My husband Lance and I were downtown Royal Oak Saturday for lunch, and we were appalled at the amount of garbage everywhere. I want to bring this to your attention, how slovenly our downtown looks. Trash bottles, cans, wrappers, cigarette butts everywhere. I've been riding the Q line downtown Detroit, and that route, both ways, walking or in the little things you have to wait for, is immaculate compared to our main street. You have hired more parking enforcement officers to make their quota of tickets. Give them a pair of rubber gloves and a trash bag. At least notebooks to jot down this stuff. All these problem areas, including damaged crosswalks and sidewalks, where we're going to be paying out big bucks in being sued. It's ridiculous. And what is the purpose of the Downtown Development Authority besides collecting bags of money from all the businesses downtown? Bill them for these maintenances and repairs. Our downtown is an embarrassment. Storefronts on both sides of Main are filthy, and this is winter. I can't imagine how awful it will be in warm weather. Coupled with the alley trash, which is being well publicized on social media. Have you guys seen this? How people are complaining about how disgusting the alleys are? When I walk my neighborhood, I pick up the trash I pass. I invite, challenge if you prefer, all of you to walk downtown, see what I'm referring to. I'll gladly share my phone number and email. I'll walk with you. Even provide the gloves and bags, and we can set the example by cleaning up. This committee needs to walk, not drive, walk. Walk and see the crap. All through our downtown shopping restaurant district, it's unacceptable. We should all be working together for the benefit of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindell. Who's next? Yes. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that, clapping is not allowed, just because we have other people that may have dissenting opinions, and we don't want to discourage or impose on their right to come up and speak. So if we could be respectful, not of the commission, but by other members of the community that may want to come up and speak. So appreciate your cooperation. Yes, sir.
I'm Mick McGuire, 4456 Arlington. I'm concerned about a liability. The federal government, it's illegal to sell marijuana, okay, in this country right now. If the city of Royal Oak allows the sale of marijuana and someone was to buy marijuana, smoke it, got in an accident, hurt somebody, could the city be sued for allowing that to take place, allowing that the sale, because I don't see how we ever run the federal government. So I'm just wondering, would there be a liability situation in that kind of case? No, that's what I'm bringing up. Thank you.
Ms. McGuire, good question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, in the back. I saw the, yes.
Good evening. Meredith Weston Bacaitis, 3582 Arbor Ave. I guess I'll start out by saying I should not have to be here tonight. There is a lot of noise going on. Call it noise, call it complaints on social media with bid contract, no bid contract, farmer's market, Boji, blah, 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 right? But when we're getting down to this point, the straw that broke the camel's back that brought me here today, I saw on Facebook that we are going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars more on a parking structure than we were supposed to. That was approved by all of you. Promised, basically your word is your vote, right? And you're going ahead and saying, no, there's a loophole. There's a loophole. I call that an excuse. I call that a lie, actually. I feel like I have to come, and I want to say too, when I speak in front of the commission, for some reason, I get shaky. I don't know why, but make no mistake, my words have no waver to them. I feel like I need to come and talk to a child right now because, and I apologize, I'm not trying to offend you, but this is what I do to my 6-year-old. I have these come to Jesus talks, and I look down, I don't get angry anymore. I look at their eyes, and I say, when you don't tell the truth, there are consequences to these facts. And I'll say that to you also. When you don't tell the truth with your vote, that is your word, there are consequences coming up as elections or other things like that. And I guess I'm just so utterly disappointed. I don't know if it's ego. I don't know what it is that you think that, and as a whole I'm saying this, you think that you can just tell your constituents, the people that voted for you, that you're gonna do one thing, and then say, oh, no, there's a loophole, it's no big deal, and then do another thing. That is, I'm saying, and I'm rambling now, but I'm saying this no bid contract for the parking was so many millions of dollars, and that was supposed to be the max. And I feel like people are looking at me like I'm crazy. So we all know what we're talking about, the parking structure. There was this quote unquote no bid contract, and there was supposed to be, well, this is the word, okay, well, if you can't, talk to me if I can't talk to you. So that is what I've been told, that is what I've heard. And if I am correct, there was supposed to be a maximum spent on this, but there are loopholes. And so now we're spending almost close to $1 million, and these dollars are already spent. And I guess if that's not true, then tell me it's not true. But I guess I'm just disappointed because I just feel like it's a lie. You guys are lying to us constantly. I tell my kids not to lie. We all tell our kids not to lie. So I think we need to look in a mirror, we as in you, and stop lying. We all have to stop lying. Thank you.
Well, I hope you stick around, ma'am, for item number 11 on the agenda. We'll be talking about it. I see a hand in the back. Ms. Harrison.
No cane. 2 months of PT did it.
right.
Laura Harrison, 2729 Trafford Road. Part 2 about the downtown. And this, I have gone to the Planning Commission, I've gone to the DDA, so now you're going to get it. We need to do something about the garbage downtown. The DDA had contracted to have people get rid of what they call the gum spots all over the sidewalk. Cigarette butts all over the place. But the worst part are the alleys. You people have got to change dumpsters to compactors. Dumpsters are a 5-star place for your favorite little running bugs called rats. And I'm sick and tired of it. We own 3 buildings downtown. I had a business down here for 28 years. Come on, guys, clean up the town. You want to scare people away? Go ahead and have Mr. B's have that alley, whatever you want to call it. The first person that's sitting at one of the chairs and a rat runs across his foot will be the last time he ever serves anything in that alley. You've got to do something, and compactors are the thing, and you've got to get these business owners to get out and clean their own sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Yes, sir, in the hat. Called you Mrs. Harrison.
Stephen Miller, former city commissioner, 115 Georgetown. Having worked as an auditor on numerous municipal audits over a several-year career, I know a little bit about how to professionally look at city annual budgets, the annual financial statements, and millage proposal language that a city decides to add to an election ballot. I recently had op-eds published where I correctly pointed out several serious concerns that I have with this mayor and commission majority piling on massive bond debt in clear violation of the city's charter, millions of dollars in no-bid contracts, and a bait-and-switch pulled on the taxpayers of Royal Oak with the millage proposal that is commonly referred to as the public safety millage. A 5-year public safety millage was proposed and passed on August 13th, 2012, and it was proposed by the City Commission because, and I quote here from the actual language, quote, "The proposed amendment to Chapter 8, Section 11 of the Royal Oak City Charter would allow the city to levy a millage for a period not to exceed 5 years to defray the cost for police, fire, and emergency medical services," close quote. A logical question would be, why has the mayor and commission majority defied the intent of the voters and pulled the dirty trick of adding only 17 police and fire positions since 2012-2013, and yet has added an additional 49 bureaucratic positions during the same time frame? The ballot language specifically read that the $10 million to be raised each year, again quoting from the actual ballot language, was, quote, "to defray the cost for police, fire, and emergency medical services." That seems pretty clear to me. No room for interpretation. One would think that this conundrum would be enough to see that the City Commission used this public safety millage money as a bait and switch, but looking deeper, it seems much more devious to me. On July 11, 2016, this mayor and commission majority put back on the ballot, a full year early, mind you, the same public safety millage, causing me to wonder, why would they do that? What could possibly be the motive? Looking back at this rush by the mayor and commission majority to put the public safety millage on the ballot a full year early, I do have one educated guess. Could it have been that this mayor and commission majority were already discussing in closed session, behind closed doors and away from the eyes of the taxpayers, the very questionable idea of giving to a private developer nearly $6 million in taxpayer money and arguably $3.5 million in prime city land for free? Again, for free. Then, about 5 or 6 months later, and only after the second public safety millage was passed, did this mayor and commission majority finally come clean to this giant tax dollar and property giveaway, giving away millions of tax dollars and prime city land that the taxpayers of Royal Oak will no longer retain equity interest in. Lastly, with well in excess of $200 million in bond debt, much of which is a clear violation of the city charter, I am wondering if the next public safety millage request in 2022 is voted down by the Royal Oak taxpayers, how will the city of Royal Oak ever be able to pay millions of dollars in annual bond debt without massive layoffs and cutting city services? Lastly, as someone who has looked at and thought long and hard about this sort of thing for a living, I am at a loss as to how this could even be possible. With this in mind, I'm asking tonight that those who voted to put the taxpayers of Royal Oak in this precarious financial position to resign. It may already be too late to unwind. It may already be too late to unwind some of the financial mess, but there will be no chance of this mayor and commission majority are allowed to continue down this reckless path.
Thank you. Mr. Miller. Okay, I see maybe Mr. Wolf, you had the first draw there.
At least I'm fast on the draw, right? But anyway, 333 North Troy Street. All of you here, all commissioners, receive the perk of free parking downtown. Park anywhere you want. You have a parking permit to park anywhere downtown, anytime you want. You can go to a bar, you can talk about city business, or you can just talk about your personal business. Doesn't matter. You get that privilege free. While elderly seniors who are on Social Security are being physiologically damaged, their health. My health is not that good. And anytime I have added stress, guess what? My health gets worse. And then I need to go to the doctor. What if I don't have a car to go to the doctor? Cab costs $20. Maybe I won't have the $20. So I stay home and have to suffer. Now, there are only 23 seniors involved. Here you have, if it was on the agenda tonight, it was pulled from the agenda, you put it last to the least. That's how important you think the seniors in Royal Oak Manor are. All they are asking now is that you please reduce the parking permit fee to $25. Mr. Gillum says you don't need the damn DDA. Now, you didn't say that exactly, but you don't need anyone because this commission has the full power over parking anywhere downtown, to whether to raise, lower, or give it away. Residents on parking restricted streets only pay $25 a year, but they're considered more valuable than the seniors at Royal Oak Manor, many of whom have lived in Royal Oak all their lives, many of whom are veterans, many of whom are now are at their wits' end because they don't even have the energy to plan to move out. And senior residences are in great demand now. It's not easier to find a senior residence, and they've been there for years. All they're asking is a small favor, a $25 reduction. But your city manager says no. They don't deserve any special treatment because they're seniors. And you toadies go along with it? You work for him, or do you work for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Is that Mr. Halleck I see right there? The beige shirt, maybe?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I served as a city commissioner from 2001 to 2005, the Planning Commission for 14 years, and the chair of the Planning Commission for 10 years. I spent 43 years working for the U.S. Postal Service, most of it in maintenance management at the largest mail sorting facility in the United States. I managed up to 150 employees and millions of dollars in contracts and purchases. If I had done a fraction of what this commission majority has done, the inspection service would have terminated my employment and prosecuted me. Tonight, this majority wants to pass over $500,000 of extra money for the parking structure on 11 Mile that had a not-to-exceed maximum price. They plan on using the change order loophole in the contract, but these aren't changes. They're issues that the contractor had to factor into their bid and failed to do so. The majority on this commission changed the oath of office, which is just wonderful, by eliminating the phrases "obey the city charter" and "nonpartisan" that have always been in the oath. They did this knowing they were going to violate the city charter with excessive amounts of debt, which exceeded the 5%. They also falsely interpreted the competitive bidding process to exclude anything except bricks and mortars, which allows them leeway to bid out millions of dollars, well, actually not bid out, just award. The majority when they were sued by downtown businesses, the majority argued the businesses lack standing to sue. If the businesses don't have a standing to sue, neither do the residents, and we now live under a dictatorship that does what they want with impunity. That is simply unacceptable. I therefore call on the mayor and the majority of this commission to resign immediately.
All right, who's next? Yes, sir, in the back.
Good evening. My name is Bob Hoff, and I reside at 3107 Marion Drive. I am here regarding Agenda Item 11, which you will get to later, which is the change order for the 11 Mile Road parking structure for the amount of $659,000. I am aware that this contract was for a construction management guaranteed maximum price of $15.5 million, and that because of a provision or a loophole, the City of Royal Oak exposed itself to further costs. I am disappointed that the decision not to competitively bid this project and allowing the contractor to also manage the project minimizes the transparency of this transaction. Assuming that the commission wants to give the contractor the $659,000, I am curious as to the timing. Why now? We are 4 months away from completion and opening the parking structure, and the $659,000 request is only for 4%. Why now, and why is there no discussion to defer this approval as negotiating leverage to ensure that the contractor completes the project on time and that there are no further surprises in the next 4 months? To approve the resolution in front of you without the City of Royal Oak imposing any conditions, reservations, or any other limitations on the contractor seems to indicate that the city is taking a weak position on this matter. In addition to the resolution as a whole, I am concerned that many of the items are questionable on whether they reflect change orders. For example, change order number 2 for $170,903.98 for the completion of construction drawings, even at $200 an hour. That represents over 850 hours dedicated to complete drawings for a parking structure. This is not the contractor's first parking structure. How is this $171,000 charge related to the change order? A change order to an existing guaranteed contract signals that everything is negotiable. So my request to the commission tonight is start negotiating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. All right, see a hand here in the aisle? Yes, ma'am.
You were talking to me. Good evening, Victoria Shunk, 233 East Webster Road. This I'm sure you all are familiar with. It's the IMCA report. It was published in 2011. It's a nice read if you can get it. I think it costs $70,000 to $78,000. This document is a risk assessment pertaining to what city government is willing to risk in regard to Royal Oak citizens' welfare, life, and property. Run numbers have increased substantially since 2012. The lack of manpower greatly impacts response time. Despite the renewal of public safety millage, the fire department remains understaffed at only 56 employees. Many apparatuses are still out of service. Since 2012, there has been no positions added to the ranks of the fire department. The fire department needs 6 firefighters and 2 inspectors. There has been a substantial growth in the city that you all are aware of, building new residents, and city government needs to stop siphoning funds that should be spent for public safety and properly staff the fire department for the welfare of Royal Oak citizens. And because of the aforementioned, I request denial of change of order for the contracted parking structure. Stop spending citizens' hard-earned dollars where it is not needed and it doesn't belong. Good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Shum. All right, Mr. Shum.
Evening, City Commission and Mayor. I'm Michael Strunk, same address, 233 East Webster. A couple months ago, I spoke with a couple of commissioners and the mayor regarding the ICMA document. I feel that without context, there is a large degree of ambiguous concepts in it. So we agreed that at your request, I would submit a review, an analysis of that document. That analysis is finally done. It was a little bit longer than I anticipated, but it's completed, and I will be emailing it to you all tomorrow, as well as if you would like to, you're welcome to email me back with any questions you want. With in excess of 25 years in the Royal Oak Fire Department and 20 years as a fire service instructor, I think I can provide the contacts for you folks to look at some of these issues, because sometimes it's difficult to read between the lines. The document will all self-explanatory, and you can communicate with me back and forth, email. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. If you would like to put it on the agenda, that would be fine also. So read it, digest it, and let me know once you discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shung, and thank you for taking the time to put together that analysis. Greatly appreciated. I see a hand in the aisle here. Is that Ms. Wagman? I can't. Yep.
Wagman, 600 Wellesley. At the last City Commission meeting, I'll do it now. At the last City Commission meeting, Commissioner DeBuck, this time joined by Mayor Fournier, once again chose to refute statements made in public comment by stating the city will receive $12.8 million, double what it has invested in the Bogie building, and that it is an undeniable fact. Mayor Fournier stated, "We can't change the facts. It's important the dialogue we have in the community is based on facts, and it's important to make these corrections." The commissioners can keep saying falsehoods and hope that they stick, but I feel it's important to make these corrections because apparently you can change the facts. The city will not receive double what is invested in the building. The taxes will go to the DDA, the state, the county, and schools. And my understanding is nothing will come back to the city's general fund where the money came from. The city's general fund gave $5.5 million taxpayer dollars and could have used the money for things like repairing sewers, roads, police, fire, library, refuse collection, maintaining parks, administration, etc. Further, had the city invested the total donation of $6.4 million at its current rate of return, which you list as 7%, at the end of that same $20 million, they could have earned almost $25 million back into the general fund. A tremendous opportunity cost that could have, for instance, secured the retirements of our public safety employees or vastly improved our infrastructure. What else did it cost the residents of Royal Oak? 2 more parcels of land. One for a parking structure, and Mayor Fournier's own statement was, who knows, maybe 20 years from now we won't even need the parking structure. It might not be this one, but the other one. And one for a park, both of which must continue to be used for these purposes as long as the Bogie Henry Ford building exists, pursuant to the agreement you have approved. And lastly, as long as Henry Ford remains a tenant, the taxes will continue to be paid. That is true. But as soon as they purchase it, it becomes a nonprofit, and they pay 0 taxes, not to the state, city, county, schools. I'd love to see the lease agreement and any option to purchase clauses. So decades from now, when Henry Ford pays no taxes to any entity, the residents of Royal Oak will still be bound by these agreements. We have not ceded a parcel of land, but 3, and $5.5 million, but millions more dollars in opportunity costs, plus the cost to maintain the parking structure and police the park, and the rights to decide how we use our land. And those are the facts.
Thank you, Ms. Wagman. Okay, who's next? a gentle reminder while Dr. Anderson is coming up, you know, clapping, it's great to show your support, but, you know, there might be other people that do have a differing opinion that may be reluctant to come up and speak. So if you can consider that, it's greatly appreciated.
Before you start timing me, I have a request. I have carefully crafted something under 3 minutes, and one small element of that is about sidewalks. May I come back with the group when you discuss the sidewalks?
Yeah,
And do
yeah,
just
you're
that
not
piece?
precluded. You can come twice if you
Okay,
have, if you
all right,
own the
'cause
property
it's just-
and you're here to
yeah.
protest your property. Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
Dr.
Thank you
Anderson.
very much. Okay, good evening, Mayor Fournier and Commissioners. I'm Dr. Wallace Anderson. Soren and I are close to beginning our 37th year residing at 404 Mount Vernon Boulevard. Given the 3-minute limit and my level of outrage, I'm going to address only 4 of the issues, except I'm only going to do 3 now. On agenda item 11, I protest the change order adding nearly $250,000 to the payment for the parking structure on 11 Mile Road. The letter indicates this is a change to the guaranteed maximum proposal approved by the City Commission on April 23rd, 2018. This kind of end run around a guaranteed maximum contract subverts the purpose of such contracts, playing fast and loose with taxpayer dollars. Next, the new City Hall design. As a longtime taxpayer, I was appalled to have the almost new surface lot south of Farmers Market built with taxpayer dollars torn out to make way for a new freestanding City Hall. The City Hall should have been combined with the police station building and designed to preserve much more Farmers Market parking. I see this City Hall is designed to take up much more surface space than necessary, even for a standalone building. It's got a large first floor, it's topped by a smaller second story, and this in a city that says it values the farmers market and says it is concerned about green infrastructures to reduce water runoff into the sewers. Last, the new development proposed for the northwest corner of Catalpa and Maine. The developer proposes 10 parking spaces for a 52-foot tall building, no setbacks, housing 60 multiple family dwelling units and 11,000 square feet of professional administrative office space. Discussion of the parking plan, the use of the city-owned lot northwest of the corner, already used by several adjacent businesses, reveals a major parking deficit just for the new building, disregarding existing businesses' use. While many of us would be pleased to see something other than that sad old garage at this site, the proposal now in planning is not a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Is that Mr. Skinner?
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for your service. I'm here tonight, first of all, to protest the assessment, special assessment on my house, and I'll use this moment to serve as that notice here today. But in being here today, really that's all I was going to do. But I've heard the themes of the people that have stepped up again, and to the many times I've spoke here in front of you, that I do think it's a little bit that you don't listen to what people are saying, and that the planning, it's the same thing. When I come here, it's the same thing, that decisions are made behind closed doors by people that really aren't in the position to make those decisions, that the construction negotiations have been poor at the very best. And one of the big themes we've heard tonight was, you know, the increase here for the parking deck. And, you know, my thoughts, you know, I haven't paid too much attention, although I'm a Royal Oak resident today. I am moving, and so I've sort of backed off paying attention. But what I don't get, and why I ran for mayor, was the cost of putting these buildings in and the problems that it's causing businesses and people here. And sort of the rookie moves that are going on in terms of negotiations. And when you're talking about a $600,000 plus increase in the parking deck, my head just keeps spinning, because this is the beginning of all of this new construction that's happening in Royal Oak. And if we let somebody add $600,000 for a parking deck, what the heck's going to happen when we really start to put money into the city hall, into the police department, into some of these other structures? And I think you guys need to be committed. It is our cash, and, you know, some of you live in Royal Oak and others don't. And well, I know Mr. Johnson does, Mr. Dubak, I don't think there, and I think there's others that may not too. But I really believe that we have to look at our budgets and stick to the budgets and fight. I mean, it's a fight that you have to do. I've operated multiple businesses that are million-dollar businesses, and everything's negotiation. And if we're letting people add on costs to projects that are approved, then we need to fight them and find out why. And I would recommend that you vote against that you find a way to negotiate it, and really take care of the citizens and listens to what they have to say. I know you have a hard job, and I appreciate that you're working for it, but as somebody said, work for us, and you know, think about the pocketbooks here. The taxes have continued to go up, and you know, there's just a lot of unhappy faces. There's new faces here with the same complaints that there were 6 months ago. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. Yes, I see a hand over here in the corner.
Greg Stanilaicho, 617 Dewey Street, Royal Oak. Happy New Year. Certainly an interesting week here in Royal Oak. I hope everybody's smiling for the camera too, because I'm very confident that sooner or later the AG or the feds are going to start looking into all the stuff that you're doing, because it's either absolute corruption or deceitful corruption. Either way, it reminds me of a great song, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap in Royal Oak. Nothing seems to surprise us anymore. It's just more of the same. Wonder what you'll think of next, because the pay-to-play schemes continue to keep getting better. Tonight, you'll be trying to jam another $750,000 on the taxpayers for an overage from a not-to-exceed contract. Everybody's talked about that, but let's talk about how it got there. On November 13th, 2007, the mayor and commissioners were here to approve another no-bid contract. The agenda item was removed. Soon after the turn of the year, February 27, 2018, RFP was put out seeking a construction manager, not the build of a parking structure. There were a variety of companies that bid on that, and it was awarded to Colasanti, ironically the same company that built the Center Street structure, right? Unfortunately, the taxpayer and commission went further and awarded a larger contract to actually build the deck when it was supposed to be for a construction manager. No bid. The other companies had no opportunity to come in and even compete with that. And now tonight on February 11th, you're going to try and jam another $750,000 onto the tax rolls for us to assume. Tomorrow is even more interesting. Tomorrow at the Planning Commission meeting, as you heard about, you got a DDA member who's going to ask for a PUD. The same DDA developer gave the mayor over $7,800 in campaign contributions, gave Charlene Douglas over $2,900 in campaign contributions. Tim Twing is both on the DDA and the Planning Committee, and obviously as taxpayers and citizens, we expect you to recuse yourself from those votes. All of you. So so this works, right? So I contribute money, I ask you to pull a PUD. You pull my PUD for me, I turn around and give you more money. Is that how this works? It's getting really ridiculous. You keep really good notes too. Maybe we can get some more. And we're doing our own campaign, Rethink Royal Oak. There's 9 empty seats up here as far as I'm concerned, and Melanie doesn't count. Have a great evening.
All right, who's next? Going once. Going, oh, sir.
My name is Steve Thatcher. I live at 423 South Kenwood, and we've lived there for 41 years. I'm actually here in case there's any questions on the American Legion proposal, but every time I drive down 4th Street and see all the beautiful lights, when I get on where we live on the other side of Campbell, we have the old street lights. So I was just wondering why we were left out of that whole situation. They put those ditches in that are rain gardens that are just full of leaves. And it just looks terrible when you get across Campbell. People coming into Royal Oak off of Stevenson enter the city down Royal Oak, the boulevard, which is really beautiful. So I was just wondering why we got left out. And many of my neighbors feel the same way. So I don't know if this is the right forum for that or another one of the departments. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can email our city engineer. My understanding is, and
CDBG dollars.
yeah, CBDG dollars are, and I think it was the plan to go down there, but we have to do it in chunks, but I'm not for certain. I'd have to confirm with our city engineer.
Right,
So
I'm actually here for the American Legion proposal in case you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Terry Myers, 1915 Roland Avenue. I didn't print out anything that I'm going to talk about. I just want to touch base on what everybody else has touched on, this additional money for the parking structure. I don't understand why there was a loophole. If there's a loophole, why wasn't the city attorney going through the contract? Why didn't he catch that? The other thing I want to state is, as I'm sitting here and everybody's coming up and they're commenting, I'm noticing Mr. Johnson is sitting there eyeing the monitor. I don't know what's on the monitor.
Would you like to come and see?
He's taking
No.
copious notes.
I'm sorry?
He's taking copious notes.
Okay, so, I mean, he's just not looking up. You know, everybody else is, listening to everyone. He's not, like, really looking up. I was just wondering. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Myers. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? See a hand back there?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Johnson. My name is David Brisboy. I live at 405 Lexington, Royal Oak. I've been a member of the city now since actually 1981, and then we actually bought property in 84, and we're very happy about it. There were really just two things. One was actually kind of a question. I did submit a letter to the city clerk for the protest of the sidewalk.
You should be good then.
And I should be all set. Okay, I just wanted to.
And now you're good double.
There you go. Okay, I just want to make sure I do it right. What I really was recently in reading some information out on the Royal Oak website, which, by the way, you guys are doing a pretty good job on that. There's a lot of information out there, perhaps maybe some more information. I'm not exactly sure what category yet, but it's looking good. So the concern has to do with Billings, the old Billings feed store across the street. From what I was reading in the Planning Commission or the proposals associated with that building versus the building at Catalpa and Maine, they're building parking spaces underneath the structure, and I think it's only 2 or 3 high stories. As compared to, and others have already mentioned this, the planned 60 development unit without parking. And it would seem rational or reasonable to expect that developer to also put in as much parking spacing that is needed. I drove down through the lots today, and I really just hadn't noticed how many individual businesses there are. And that lot, at least around 11:30 or 12, was packed. It was really full, so it kind of surprised me. But any event, my real question is, I just want to make sure what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and that I would not recommend we give them a variance or whatever, not to have to provide parking for their residents.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right, we'll bring the meeting back up to here. Public comment is closed. This brings us to item number 7, which is the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Douglas?
Move approval.
A motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We have an agenda set. Okay, this brings us to item number 8, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda? Commissioner Gibbs.
I wanted to pull off A just for a
quick change that needs to be made. I can state that now, or we can pull it off. And I can
We'll
state
get to it. We'll
Okay.
get the consent agenda approved, and then A will be the first one. Anybody else? Commissioner Douglas?
Well, I'd like to pull off K2.
K2, okay. Anybody else? All right, that leaves us with the consent agenda, which consists of appointments committee recommendations, claims from February 1st and February 12th, 2019, approval of purchase order, finance department request to fill vacancy, award of contract cap 1915-2019, asphalt resurfacing improvements, award of contract cap 1925, 2019 joint sealing improvements, award of contract cap 1935, 2019 road reconstruction improvements, fireworks ordinance amendment, second reading, renewal of letter of agreement for employee assistance program agreement, receive and file non-action items, including the January 2019 investment report and the January 2019 Franco project activity report. So is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Macy, seconded by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion on the consent agenda? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner Gibbs, item A from the consent agenda, City Commission meeting minutes, January 28th, 2019. Floor is yours.
I wanted to make a change to the special event permit for Motor City gas food trucks. I did not vote on this one, and I was a no vote on it. So I've spoken to Mr. Gillum about this, and I can pull it off and add myself as a no to it.
Mr. Gillum, as a matter of procedure, is that possible?
What Commissioner Gibbs and I discussed was she indicated that she didn't voice her vote at the time, and she had intended to vote no, and she didn't, so.
I just want to put it on the record, so.
Procedurally, though, to change a vote or to recalculate a vote, how would we go about doing that? I don't know that it's possible because the rules say if you don't vote, then if you don't vote no, then a no vote or a non-vote is a yes for the record, correct?
You have to say no.
You have a non-vote is a vote with a majority.
Right, right. So there's no way to unwind it unless the question's called again. But
Well, and rather than have to call the question again, Commissioner Gibbs is asking that her vote be corrected to show that it was a no vote. So,
okay. And how do we go? Commissioner Dubuck?
Do we do that by way of a motion?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, is trying to understand.
I mean, if the commission feels it's necessary, we could do a motion for reconsideration, and then we could revote the same question again, or we could vote on the proposed amendment to the minutes.
So we could vote to change the minutes to a no vote based on Commissioner Gibbs' request. And that would be, is that what you're suggesting as an option?
Under the circumstances, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay.
Because she did not vote the last time.
Okay, Commissioner Dubuck?
I have no problem changing the record so long as it doesn't reflect, our clerk is clearly taking the roll accurately that there were no votes. So, but we're gonna amend it for the minutes.
Right.
Because her intent was to vote no.
That's my understanding. That's
Okay.
that's
And that's not, okay, that's not gonna pose a problem.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah, good.
Thank you.
So, we would need a motion.
To approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Gibbs, second by Commissioner Lavasser. Discussion? Commissioner Macy?
I guess I'll say it seems irregular to me to be able to change a recorded vote that we have on tape based on amending the minutes of a meeting. That seems like a very strange thing. I mean, I believe Mr. Gillum that this is legal to do, but it sure seems odd.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've never experienced, since the almost 10 years of being up here, I've never experienced it, but, you know.
I mean, it seems like a possible violation of open meetings, perhaps, like in this open meeting, the issue was discussed, the vote was taken, and now later, we're going back and amending the recorded vote of that. It seems.
Again, if the commission would prefer, then the action would bring to a motion to reconsider the vote from the last meeting, and then the matter could be brought back in front of the commission tonight, and the vote could be taken again.
To me, that makes more, to me, that makes more sense. But
Commissioner Dubak?
Commissioner Macy's right. I was trying to just go with the path of least resistance because it doesn't impact anything. But if it were a circumstance where we're a 3-4 vote and someone decided the next week, well, I wanted to vote the other way and could just unilaterally change their vote, that would be, I don't think we want to set that standard.
Well, and that would be a different set of circumstances, I agree. But it's at the commission's discretion as to how to proceed procedurally tonight. I think we understand where we want to get to. It's just a question of how we get there.
Okay. Commissioner Perush?
I'm not comfortable voting for this motion that's on the table now, but I would be comfortable voting for reconsideration to allow Commissioner Gibbs to actually vote the way she wants to vote on this.
Okay. We have a motion on the table, so I'm gonna, any other discussion?
Shall I withdraw that motion?
Motion belongs to the body.
Motion belongs to the table right now.
Motion's
so
on the
we
table
have to-
right now, correct.
So, no further discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
No.
Commissioner Gibbs, how did you vote for clarity on this one?
Since we're going to recall it, then I'm voted no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so.
And the next step would be a motion for reconsideration of the vote that was taken at the last meeting on the food truck question for Motor City Gas. And it would need to be a member who voted in the majority that is in favor of the approval of the special event permit request that would need to make the motion.
Prevailing side.
Any of us.
Prevailing side.
Any of us.
It was a unanimous vote, right? But you were recorded as a yes, so you could make the motion to reconsider.
No, I did not vote though, so, but I'll make the motion. I vote for reconsideration on the special event permit for Motor City Gas.
Motion by Commissioner Gibbs, second by Commissioner Dubak. All right, this is a motion for reconsideration, not the actual subject. Any discussion? All right, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we have a motion for reconsideration approved. So the topic is now for reconsideration. Commissioner Macy.
I guess I'm curious to hear Commissioner Gibbs' reasoning for her, not change, but her now enunciated vote.
Yeah, I want to know it too.
Sir.
I looked around the table and I was the only no, and I sort of got a feeling of intimidation, so I did not say anything. And I hate to admit that, but yeah, that's what I got, so that's why I didn't vote. But I also said to Melanie I didn't vote, and she said that's a yes. So, to Ms. Hollis, so.
Commissioner Macy.
So it could be that I'm just forgetting, but I was wondering what your reasoning was for voting. Like, we had this discussion around the table about it and asked some questions of the petitioner. I'm just wondering what your reasons
I just don't think that a special event permit for 3 months is the proper way to allow, you know, a couple of weekends or 12 weekends of food truck.
Thank you.
Business.
Fair enough. All right, someone want to make a motion at this time? Commissioner Dubak?
Is the motion to approve
Yes.
that last decision that we already made?
Yes, the food trucks.
The motion is to either, excuse me, is either to grant the request for the special event permit or deny the special event permit. The issue is back in front of the
We had
body.
amended at the table, right? Because we did amend it at the table?
Yes.
So motion to approve as we had amended at the last.
No changes since last time. Right. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dubak. We have a second by Commissioner Macy. All right, discussion on this one. So not going to reconsider a reconsideration of the considered motion. This is it. All right.
Ask me next week.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
All right. There we go. Got it on the record. All right, Commissioner Douglas, you had item number 2 on the receive and file non-action items related to Royal Oak Manor parking. Floor is yours.
Yes, we've heard much about the issues of parking around the Royal Oak Manor and about the way the residents there are treated. And this is a report from our police chief about an arrangement that the city has reached with the residents there, whereby those who are purchasing parking passes across the street but have mobility issues will get a special placard to put in their car and will be allowed to park on William Street between 6th and 7th. The police chief met with the board of directors. He's worked out an agreement in order to make that happen. He's assigned Sergeant Tykau as a liaison there. And I just, I wanted to give credit to the police department and the chief for actually working out these accommodations. And so we don't need to move on this because it's just a.
We have to move to receive and file.
Okay, so I'll move to receive and file this report.
A motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion?
As I said.
Okay. Anybody else? With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. This brings us to item number 9, which is the American Legion request to place a plaque at the War Memorial. Mr. Krazan.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. Back in the fall, the American Legion Post had contacted the city manager's office requesting permission to place a new plaque at the Memorial Plaza. So since that time, the volunteers from the Post have been working to put together a proof, a draft of the plaque they're going to ask to place. And they are now ready and are seeking approval from the City Commission, as the city attorney has said would be appropriate. So the staff is recommending, if you guys are in agreement, that you approve this, and we've got a resolution to that effect.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Krazan? Commissioner Perush.
Attached to this is a rendering of what it would look like, and it looks very nice, but I didn't find anywhere in the information how large it is, and also exactly where on the War Memorial it will be.
This is actually the size.
Oh,
It's the actual size. There is an available rock in the War Memorial area.
Okay.
That's empty already.
Okay.
So in researching, I couldn't find anybody to make a decision except for you, with the help of James. So this is the actual size. It will be made out of bronze, much like all the other ones.
Okay.
So,
all right, that looks great.
Very nice. We veterans would appreciate it very much.
It'll be beautiful. Yeah.
Commissioner Perush?
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Motion by Commissioner Perush, second by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion? It's a very lovely addition, and I think the thanks all goes towards our veterans, not to this body, so thank you. It's a small token, but certainly you guys have made a big impact on our quality of life and freedom here, so thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
We'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to seeing it.
Well, we're on the road now, finally.
All right, this brings us to item number 10, which is the Special Assessment Standard Resolution 5, 2017 Sidewalk Improvement Program Phase 2. As promised, if you're here to protest that assessment, the amount, we're going to open up public comment again for you to come up and put your name on record. Remember to put your name and address and state that you are protesting the assessment to make sure that it's all copacetic. So, yes, ma'am. And thank you for working with us to make this a little easier for us to record it, so we appreciate
Mayor
your
and City
patience.
Commissioners, Margaret Cope, 538 Mount Vernon. I am here in regard to the assessment I received on the new sidewalk along my property on Custer. You have a copy of my earlier email, which includes the property description. My initial estimate was $8,100. My new bill is now $8,479.30. This increase is in part due to the removal and replacement of part of my existing driveway. The new sidewalk going through the driveway portion was poured late on August 31st, the Friday of Labor Day weekend. Final smoothing of the surface and placement of barricades was completed between 5 and 5:30 p.m. It seems that a rush to complete a project late on a Friday when people would be unavailable to address any problems, particularly on a holiday weekend, was not well thought out. Around 7 p.m. on August 31st, I went out to look at the sidewalk, only to notice a large set of footprints and dog tracks had walked through the new concrete. It was clear that they were adult, presumably a male with a good-sized dog. It was also apparent that this individual had intentionally crossed over the barricades to walk through the new concrete and then continued his journey down the road. It was impossible to reach anyone, but I did send an email to Matt Exley, who had indicated to me that he was the touch person for this sidewalk issues. I explained the situation, hoping it could somehow be corrected. I have a copy of that email if anyone doubts the contact attempt. The marks are not deep, but they are clearly visible. On a city project costing me over $8,000, I wanted the city to be aware, and I hope that it could be corrected. I also did not want to risk the city either holding me responsible for the damage or deciding that I would be responsible for replacement during any future sidewalk improvement endeavor. I know the city is not responsible for replacement, it has no more control over individuals who exercise poor behavior than I do. But I do think that this situation and my email should have been acknowledged with some sort of response. I heard nothing. No sorry, no someone will take a look at it, no nothing. By Tuesday after the holiday weekend, the issue was literally set in stone. I now have an $8,400 bill for a project that the city felt was absolutely necessary to rush to completion late on a holiday weekend to ensure a walkable community, a project one individual and his dog clearly did not value. I wanted on the record that this flaw was and remains an issue immediately identified and subsequently ignored by the city. My concerns and questions over a possible repair were never answered and apparently dismissed. As to the rude and arrogant individual who felt so entitled that he needed to cross over and knock down 2 city barricades in order to exercise the right to walk a dog on a freshly poured city sidewalk in order to prove something, I have absolutely no civil words. This was not an accident. It was a mean, intentional act showing disregard for the city, the community, and especially to me, who is now expected to pay for this new sidewalk. Any reasons totally escapes me, and I doubt anyone would have been happy with this.
Thank you, Ms. Cope. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Byrne. I live at 536 West 13 Mile, Royal Oak, Michigan. I'm one of the citizens that was forced to put the unnecessary sidewalk on my own property and being forced to pay for it out of my own pocket. Since this decision was unilaterally made by this body with absolutely no concern for the opinions of those of us affected, I have had countless communications with the city engineer's office that were at best misleading and at worst downright fraudulent. Last year, after the city moved to build the sidewalks within hours, most likely, of the circuit court's decision not to interfere with the project, I called the city engineer's office to ask if I could partake in the payment plan, figuring, okay, fine, we lost, I might as well try to spread this out. Now, the payment plan charges you 6% interest per year, and despite this council's agreement or at least statement on the record that they would try to find a better arrangement, no arrangement was made. In addition to that, when I called the engineer's office asking about the paperwork, they told me that I would be getting something in the mail. That paperwork never came to me, and I was given no explanation as to why. I called almost monthly after that up until today, asking what the final assessment was going to be on my property, when I would have to spend thousands of dollars, when I had to dip into my own savings just to pay for this sidewalk. And depending on who at the city engineer's office answered the phone, I was given a random amount. I think I received 4 or 5 different amounts from people on the phone. I don't know if they were just making numbers up off the top of their head or what. Or I was told that paperwork would be coming in the mail. Finally, on January 28th, I received a letter. It was dated January 28th, 2018, not 2019, the actual year, stating that in order to review the assessed cost, we would have to visit the website at romi.gov/sidewalk, singular. If you enter that URL into a web browser, you'd get an error saying no page exists. Now, at the time, I didn't realize it's sidewalks. It was, again, mislabeled on the notice sent out to us, but I didn't realize at the time, so once again, I called city engineer's office to let them know, hey, this isn't working. When I did, they said, oh, we don't know why it's not working. They didn't say, what did you type in? They just said, we have no idea. So I asked if they could just tell me if the assessment was out, what the assessment was. And I heard two employees talking. Neither of them had any clue where to look. And then I was told that we'd be getting a letter in March 2019 telling me what the assessment would be. Now, I would have left it alone, but thankfully my neighbor sent out a chain email saying the assessment had to be objected to by tonight, or I would lose the right. I don't know if the city engineer's office is being incompetent or willingly misleading its citizens to force this agenda through, but this is completely unacceptable. The entire process has been undemocratic since the beginning, and this is just completely unacceptable of this council. If you expect me to pay over $7,000 for some slabs of concrete, I expect the city engineer's office to be transparent and professional about the entire process. I also noticed that the sidewalks installed at Realtor Park have no cost in the assessment. I would like this council to explain how much was paid for, because I want to make sure that every dime that we spend is accounted for.
Mr. Byrne, I do need you to finish your last thought.
And I was just going to say, my name's David Byrne. I'm protesting the city's tax assessment on my parcel at 722504454010. Thank you.
Mr. Byrne. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you. I will be brief. I am orally protesting the special assessment of our property. We filed a letter of protest today with the city clerk, and the sidewalks do not benefit us, the property owners, nor any of the other 15 neighbors forced to have new sidewalks. Instead of peaceful, open green spaces with shrubs and trees for privacy screening, we now on Washington have a tunnel created by two new long privacy fences by people who had to give up their privacy, their natural privacy. Furthermore, sidewalk maintenance, especially in winter, is onerous. Soren has 250 more feet of snow blowing on sidewalks that we never use and are not often used by others. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Dave Smith, reside at 322 West 13 Mile, Royal Oak. Also here to protest the new sidewalk that was installed back in July, or in August/September. What else do I need to do, sir?
I think.
Do you need the text?
Got name,
number?
address, and you're protesting, you said the sidewalk, but you're protesting the assessment?
Yes, I'm sorry, the assessment. Well, I'm protesting the sidewalk also because it was not necessary and it's, I do not believe it adds value.
For the purpose of today's administration, the assessment is clear. Okay.
Have I
think
fulfilled that?
that's-
No
that meets the
questions, no
conditions.
loopholes, no overruns, we're good? Okay, thank you.
All right, who's next? Going once, going twice, okay. If you still wish to speak on the topic, or not speak on the topic, but protest the assessment, we do have a sheet here that will allow you to complete tonight. If for whatever reason you don't want to come up to public comment, so. Okay, so that brings us to.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
If I could, just would note for purposes of the record that we did receive some other correspondence from some other property owners today.
Okay.
And their rights have been preserved. It's Alice Brown and Thomas Smith at 605 Mount Vernon. Michael DePasio at 322 Woodside. Mary Lance at 404 Lexington. Barbara Lannon, 303 East Windermere and 306 Windermere. Showmeisters at 302 Midland Boulevard. And then Sykes at 325 Lexington, in addition to the people that spoke tonight.
Okay.
And I believe there's at least one individual that signed the list over there. So.
Okay. Your rights have been preserved for the tax tribunal. Commissioner Lavasser.
Could we have Ms. Hollis give us the name that's on the list, just so we have it in the recorded record?
Sure, there's actually two.
Thank you.
Steve James at 236 Midland Boulevard and Laura Jewell at 539 Lexington Boulevard.
Thank you.
All right, so this brings us to Mr. Callahan for item number 10.
Yes, I would like to add that, in addition to what the commission letter states about the work being done, we will still, until the city treasurer puts this into their computer system for billing, we will still take requests for people who want a payment plan. So that's still available, and we've been telling anyone who called us on the phone to ask for that. I would also add that on the resolution itself in paragraph 2, the payments after the 1st of July 2019 will begin in July of 2020, not in 2018. So the date needs to change to 2020, but that's standard accounting procedure down in the treasurer's office. Once they set up the assessment for those people who have asked for a payment plan, it will go into the computer and it automatically bills them. They don't have to think about it after the first entry into the system.
Questions for Mr. Callahan? Commissioner Lavasser.
I don't know if this is just for Mr. Callahan or perhaps Mr. Gillen, but the question I would have is whether the request for a payment plan would serve as a waiver of any rights to take the mayor to the tax tribunal.
I think our position would be that it would constitute a waiver of those rights, yes.
All right, and is that as a matter of law or policy, or what would that be?
There's a provision, I don't remember if it's in the charter, I believe it's under state law, that says if there's any kind of a payment that has been made on a special assessment, that constitutes a waiver of the rights to go to the tax tribunal. So I think our position would be that the agreeing to enter into a payment plan would have the same effect as a payment and would therefore constitute the waiver.
Is there an opportunity to make a payment under protest, perhaps? Could we make that the policy and follow that policy?
If the payment was made under protest, it could be accepted as such, yes.
Okay, I will bring a motion then that we allow residents who wish to appeal to the tax tribunal to also apply to make payments and to do so under protest and not to waive their right to appeal to the tax tribunal.
Motion by Commissioner Lavasser. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Gibbs. Discussion. Commissioner Macy.
Interesting. I think this is interesting. I'm wondering if it might make more sense instead of having them forcing them to make the payment under protest, which now we have to go inform them that they have that right. If instead, if you've protested with the tax tribunal, you have an extended period of time with which you can request a payment plan.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of going about it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
We got a motion on the table that we'd have to, I don't know if we could amend it because it's kind of a little bit completely different. So maybe we can vote on this one and then take the same idea, the same concept, the same spirit, and make it something that's a little bit more palatable to make the process easier for everybody. So any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Macy, do you wish to?
So I'd like to make a motion that if someone has timely protested their special assessment to this body, that they have an extended period of time open to suggestions, Mr. Callahan?
Well, the treasurer isn't scheduled to set up the first payment to be due on or around July 1st, of this year. So they have some, I'm not quite sure what the schedule is for the tax tribunal hearings, but they certainly have until July.
Everybody has till July.
Everyone has until July. So there is some time before they will see that initial invoice, whether they've applied for a payment plan or not.
6 weeks after the tribunal,
Their appeal
the
to the
hearing
tribunal,
is
yeah. Okay.
conducted, something like that.
6 weeks after the hearing in front of the tax tribunal, they have the opportunity to request a payment plan from the city.
Could I suggest it be 6 weeks from the decision as opposed to the hearing? Because my understanding is they're not necessarily the same date.
Okay, yes. See, you should know. From the decision.
So Commissioner Macy has 6 weeks from the decision of the Tax Tribunal for property owners to consider a payment plan if that's what they desire to do. Okay. All right. So is there a second? Second is Commissioner Lavasser. Okay, discussion. I'll just add it makes sense.
Good idea.
I mean, yeah, good catch, good idea. You know, you shouldn't, you know, if you lose your tax tribunal, and you might need a payment plan. So you don't want to have people choose between one or the other. They should have all the rights entitled to them and due process before we do the payment plans, because we know sometimes these bills are tough and we want people to make sure that they have the ability to pay for them over time. So we don't want anyone to waive that opportunity. So good catch. Okay, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, is there anything left, Mr. Callahan?
Other than the fact that the standard resolution 5 is attached, it lists the properties and their total prices, as well as some properties that requested the payment plan. We've also received a couple since the time that this letter was published, so that's not necessarily it's not gonna change their overall dollar amount. It's just gonna give direction to the city treasurer when she puts it into the computer.
Commissioner Macy? Question?
So I was going to ask about the mistaken URL, and so I will admit that the letter did go around to the commission today because it was requested, but I didn't know what I was looking for then, and so now I'm wondering if the URL that was incorrect, was that critical to doing some part of what you needed to do in the instructions for the letter?
No, that just was they had this list of the dollar amounts per property, so we didn't create custom mailings to people. We just said, go to the URL if you want to see what the total dollar amount is.
But in order to, so
If somebody,
to figure if they wanted to protest, they needed to know how much they were being assessed, and the URL that we told them to go to find out how much they were assessed was incorrect?
I'm not sure about that. This is the first I've heard of it. Our community engagement specialist.
Yeah, it'll be really easy for me to go and create a URL that says sidewalk singular instead of plural that goes to the same site. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, right.
so that the sidewalk, so the incorrect URL works.
But that's
Question
too
is
late
when they
now.
received it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean, because yes, if we had known back then, as soon as we sent it out, we could have fixed it, but now everyone has made their decision about whether or not to protest based on. So
Well, I would add that we had quite a few people call us and ask us to, for whatever reason, to read them. There are people who don't have computers, and you know, we answered every person's questions who did call us, but our phone number was on there to call us if they had any questions. So like I said, we did get a number of phone calls regarding this, and we gave them the information that they asked for. So I'm not quite sure about the URL not being correct or not, but this is the first I've heard of it this evening, so.
I think that there's a potential concern here that residents may feel prejudiced by an erroneous letter, and perhaps what we need to do is get it right and postpone this decision, get a letter out there that's without question correct.
Second opposed?
We,
Delays or issues?
you can postpone the vote. I would assume we could send another mailing out to people. I don't know if, our letter said that we're going to be hearing people's protests. Do you want to continue to hear people's appeal protests?
Yeah, well, I would think if they haven't already protested, they can come to the next commission meeting or submit a letter. We don't need to have it done redundantly, but that's gonna be an issue that we'd have to work through, is to make sure people aren't confused when they get another letter. Or maybe we send it to the folks that didn't actually put in, you know, a protest. That way, I know that'll be harder for your office, but I do agree if there's something wrong with the link, you know. Commissioner Lavasser?
I'm going to move that we continue this, Mayor, to March 25th, and that sometime within the next 2 weeks, that the engineering department send out a letter to the affected parcels, notifying them of the continuation, and again, the appropriate link that will give them information, and also informing them of their opportunity to protest and their obligation to protest if they wish to preserve their rights.
You mean February 25th?
No, March
So 6 weeks?
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, my brain's jumping ahead. So I think March 11th would suffice. I don't want it to be too quick.
Okay. Commissioner Macy?
Seconding.
Okay, second. Mr. Gillum?
Commissioner Levasseur, could I just get clarification from you? Are you saying that notice should be generated to everyone? Or I think there might be some merit to what the mayor had suggested, to only generating a notice to those people that have not already filed a protest.
Yeah, and just to clarify, my intention is just to those who have not yet preserved their rights to appeal. You know, I don't want to create additional work if it's easier for the city staff to send it to everyone. I don't have a problem with that either, but the ones that I think are critical here are the ones who have not yet preserved their rights.
We got 60 or 70 properties, a few dozen people that are on record. I think we can probably spend an hour to sort it out. I don't want to speak for you, Mr. Callahan, but.
All I say is, you know, there's always human error involved every time you start deleting addresses out of an Excel spreadsheet. Sure. So I don't want to, I'd hate to miss somebody and then have somebody come before you and say that they didn't get a notice for whatever reason. And you'd want to, you know, they might have a legitimate reason for not being noticed.
Commissioner Douglas?
Well, easy fix. You know, you have a sentence that says, if you have already protested your tax tribunal, you're fine. Otherwise, go to this website. And perhaps Ms. Davids could be recruited to craft that in the most beneficial way.
Okay, well, we're going to need an amendment to the motion then, because Commissioner Levasseur clarified his intentions that it would only go to.
I don't think it's necessary based on what Mr. Callahan indicated, that it probably is the safer route just to resend to everyone. And for the $10 in postage, I don't know that it makes a difference here.
Okay. Is it clear then? It's to everyone then now. Okay.
With the additional sentence that
Yeah.
Commissioner Douglas said.
Mr. Gillum, do you have any issues?
No.
The way the motion's set up?
No.
Mr. Callahan, you understand with clarity?
I know to add a sentence, yes.
You know what, and I'll just add a suggestion out there. If you want to add something that we just on the previous motion related to not waiving your right for payment plan with the tribunal, that would be helpful to say the commission also voted for this to make sure.
I can include that as well.
Are protected. Commissioner Macy.
This is just a small suggestion for Judy. I think it might make sense to say in the letter, there was a mistake, there was a typo in the URL the first time around, just so that, to help people understand what it is, why this is happening again.
If there was. We don't, I mean, we assume there probably was or is. Don't know.
Whatever.
All right, any other discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, we'll see it again next, whatever,
March 11th.
March 11th. Okay. All right, this brings us to item number 11, which is the change order for 11 Mile Road parking structure. Mr. Fenton.
The City Commission. The resolution before you seeks to approve change orders that are applicable to the 11 Mile Road parking structure. I brought Chris Becker from Plant Moran Crest, our owner's rep, to clarify some items that I've heard tonight that aren't correct. These change orders are attributable to work that was either excluded in the original scope of services or added to the scope by the city as the project went forward. The actual budget for the parking garage is attachment 3, which is $18.1 million. We have budgeted for an owner's contingency for unforeseen conditions that, again, were excluded in the original scope of services. Even with the increase that we are requesting today, the budget was built to absorb that increase, and we will still come in under budget as of this day. We're looking at 4 more months of work and probably about $200,000 under budget. So I have Chris, again, Becker here. He can refresh what the GMP is, what was included, what wasn't included, and can help walk through any change orders you might want to talk about.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. And I'd just like to walk through some clarifications so people can understand what we're asking for in this set of change orders to the GMP contract on the parking deck. First, some procedural items. You know, the GMP contract was publicly bid per City of Royal Oak's purchasing requirements. The bids were evaluated using the pre-established criteria-based selection process, which really took into account the safety of the contractors, their experience, the team they proposed, their experience, their bonding capacity, and then cost for the overall management of the work. We included the AIA 133 CM cost plus GMP contract form into the bid proposal, and it was sent out to all the bidders. They had access to it. The contract form is a modified form from a widely accepted industry standard contract. The RFP did not require bidders to provide a GMP proposal. It was a request that all the documents, all we wanted was for a CM proposal on how they had managed the work. Colasani provided a GMP proposal in the voluntary alternate, or as a voluntary alternate, based upon their confidence with the estimated cost and schedule, and informed by the recent experience in the marketplace with similar parking structures, and that is the 2nd Street parking deck that was built just before this, and it's almost exactly the same. We recommended, and the commission awarded the contract to Colasani based on several factors, including the qualifications of Colasani's team, as well as the cost and schedule certainty provided by the GMP proposal. Accepting the proposal, the GMP proposal, protected City of Royal Oak against potential price increases in the marketplace, construction trade shortages. As we know, there's a lot going on in the area, and we were concerned with how much work would be happening in the city of Detroit and the surrounding communities. And then changes to tariffs on commodities, and i.e. steel. When we were in this process, we were kind of concerned with how government changes on tariffs may affect the materials coming to the job site. Colasani's proposed GMP was approximately $900,000 under the construction estimate cost, understanding that was formed the basis of the owner's budget for the project. As we know, the budget was $16,400,000 for the construction only of the parking deck, and their GMP proposal of $15,554,000. As you can see, it's nearly $900,000 under the budget. Industry standard and practices, the CM as a contractor cost plus GMP structure is an industry standard delivery method where a GMP is provided but remains subject to change due to subsequent changes in the work. What we're going to be talking about tonight and what we proposed are changes in the work. It's not a loophole. It's not like Colasani's trying to get more money because they underbid the job. That's not the case. An industry standard practice for scope of work to evolve through work evolves throughout the duration of the project, either due to owner changes in the scope or discovery of unforeseen existing conditions. And I'll be able to go through each change if you'd like once we go through it, but several of them are unforeseen conditions and several are added scope of work, or most of it really. Almost 90% is added scope of work. Change orders to date, as there's $591,533 for changes in the scope of work or design, the completion of the design. Changes for unforeseen conditions is $68,107 roughly. So the total change is $659,640.37. A couple of facts before we get into a little bit more details. The project is on budget and it is on schedule, and we were looking for a June completion, and we do anticipate coming in about $200,000 under the budget that we established on the job. Potentially more, but we really have to wait till we get closer to the end of the job to determine how much more we can be under budget. Some of the additional scope items, we performed the library streetscape on 11 Mile. A lot has to do with it's right next to the parking deck, and we complete from Troy Street. Really, construction from Troy all the way to Main Street will be complete on 11 Mile. There's also the Second Street. There's decorative lights that were added in that weren't originally anticipated. And then, of course, the alley decorative concrete, as we know, next to the Henry Ford Healthcare Building in the alley, that was a decorative concrete was done, and the decision by the city, which makes complete sense. We also did the alley in between the parking deck and the buildings, so it all looks similar. Going on to Colasani's, really their original bid on the job, when they gave us the GMP proposal, they identified some of the items that which substantiated their proposal, and they were really utilizing the Second Street specifications and some of the drawings, but we had enough drawings that we'd be able to bid with it, so they could really bid a good GMP, but the specifications weren't completed. The design was not complete when we went with the GMP. They do note on here the proposal is in conformance with the City of Royal Oak's requirements for prevailing wages. Back when we bid this, there was still a department in the Michigan with prevailing wages, and all those were included in the GMP proposal. It notes use Second Street parking deck specifications, since specifications for 11 Mile parking structure weren't available with the RFP. They were developed, and that's part of one of the change orders. Several detail pages were yet to be issued in the final construction set, so we have supplemented the RFP drawings with the applicable drawings from the Second Street parking deck. They do note some items that were excluded in the GMP proposal that they gave to us. By the way, all this information was provided with the recommendation previous. And some of those excluded furnish and installation of parking control equipment, which was awarded 2 weeks or 4 weeks ago. Independent testing, DTE costs, as well as all utilities, builder's risk insurance, landscaping, lawn irrigation, site furnishings, except for 10 tree grates, minor grass restoration, as well as brick pavers in William Street along the library's west elevation. The elevator mounted HVAC units, those are actually in PCO number 10, which is part of what we're looking to get approved. And then unknown subsurface conditions. And with that, that really goes through the majority of what they had in their proposal, but it was a very fair proposal. It was analyzed by the architect, by Plant Moran Cressa, and I think some people with the city, and we made the recommendation. It was awarded. Now, with the $659,000 worth of work, if you don't mind, I can go through some of those with you or for you, and then you can ask me questions as we go through. Change order number 1. We have some subsoil conditions. We had undercut poor soil conditions. When we get into a foundation, we're going to have the material testing company go and test the soil so it has a specific bearing capacity. When we don't have that bearing capacity, we typically got to remove the soil, compact something back in place so we have the right bearing capacity. That's what the undercut poor soil conditions on number 1, and I want to make a specific note. Once we got past this change order, we asked Colasani not to submit anything under $1,000 anymore, and that hasn't happened since that change. Existing concrete concealed condition. As we were digging a foundation, we ran across some existing concrete. It was like an old foundation that was there. It had to be removed. Soil had to be put in its place. The precast concrete custom color. It's kind of not a fair description, but I got a note in here what Colasani told us in their GMP proposal. Notice to proceed given by April 9th. This needs to take place. A material change order for the golden marble aggregate in the precast mix design. The quarry that was producing the specified material is terminating the mining of this material. In short, unless an order is placed quickly, an alternate material will need to be selected, which will not match the Second Street deck. This notice to proceed is formulated. Unfortunately, we couldn't get them going fast enough on the job. We wanted the precast, the city wanted the precast to match the Second Street deck. That's what the $52,000, $52,769 is, so we could have the precast match each other because of material change. And then Northeast Tower undercut poor soil conditions. Again, in the Northeast Tower, we had some poor soil, so we had to undercut it, replace it. Moving on to change order number 2. The 11-mile existing water surface conflict with the foundation, as you know, we couldn't anticipate where one of the foundations had to go along 11 Mile. We ran into the existing water service, so we had to move the water service. We had to really shut down operations, move the water surface, and then proceed with the foundation work. And that was a big cost because of the moving of the water line, and we had some water line work to perform. We had some contaminated soil removal in the area. In some cases, existing situations where we have contaminated soil, we had to pay additional hauling fees to get the contaminated soil off the job site. Foundation undercut due to poor soils. Once again, we had another situation where poor soils, so we had to remove it and bring in good soils. And then we get to the 100% construction drawings, completion of design. As I noted earlier, Colasani's GMP was based upon the Second Street deck without the specifications. We finally got the design completed. And several of those items that were affected is site work drawings were completed. So there was some water main work that was added, storm sewer structures were changed in size. They went larger from 4 foot to 5 foot. There was added gate valves, and then the canopy foundations, which weren't on the original drawings at all, and they couldn't go with. That's the site work. Steel, we had barrier cable system and the canopy that were added. Those are the steel costs. On plumbing, they added floor drains, some trap primers, backwater valves for storm and sanitary systems. The HVAC, the elevator HVAC units, piping and venting for those. And then on electrical side, there was many light revisions. The canopy lighting and power out to the canopy on the east side. And then we increased the feeders to the generator from 200 amps to 400 amps, and then increase the size of the generators, and that had a lot to do with the power requirements for the HVAC units on top of the elevators. So we had to go forward. All those together, the architect, Plant Moran, and some people with the city, we reviewed the $170,000, and it's a fair and reasonable cost for the work that wasn't in the original scope. That's the biggest change in all of these. Then we get to the alley investigative dig. After Clark Construction performed the work on the south alley, we knew there was a lot of underground utilities and a lot of issues that were unknown, so that we don't dig and hit anything and disrupt any kind of service to the buildings. We talked about doing an alley investigative dig, and that actually happened on a weekend, so we'd have the least amount of disturbance to the buildings and to the businesses that tie into the alley. Then the northeast tower undercut poor soils condition. Again, that was identified by the soils testing company. Change order number 3 is design bulletin number 1. That had a lot of changes to the 11-mile curb, decorative lights in the alleyway, power to the lights on Second Street, and an increase in planter wall height. Those were all design changes, felt they were needed. Actually, the power to the lights was definitely needed, so that we could power the lights from the parking deck and not from a connectivity tie-in, which would have been much farther down the line. So we think this saved us money overall with the lighting changes coming to the parking deck. That's what the $64,784 is. Then on change order number 4, as I noted before, to change the alley concrete to the colored stamped concrete, that was $62,905. Unfortunately, they found out in their pricing, we kind of got through, the colored concrete price actually had a correction of $43.58 because it's more expensive than their original proposal. The change in sidewalk expansion joints to 1 inch, that was really flagged by the City of Royal Oaks Engineering Department. It's better to have a nice wide joint around the building to 1 inch, so that's what happened with that change. Moving on to change order number 5, power to street lights from the parking deck and connectivity work. Again, we had to do power back to the parking deck. That sounds like it's a double up, but it was actually completely different work where we had to take power out to the parking, to the street lights along 11 Mile. On bulletin 3, sidewalk thickness to 6 inch along the library. It was 4 inch. It was spec'd and shown to be 4 inches originally. And the city engineer realized that at times cars may go up on that sidewalk and over the curb, and therefore 6 inches of concrete is way more stable than 4. So we got direction to change it to 6 inches. Temporary alley asphalt. In the price for Colasani was to put in stone to do all their work. Just a limestone, which is very good surface. But we felt that the longer duration it's open, it would be better to put in temporary asphalt. So we asked them to do it with temporary asphalt, and for that price. Moving on to change order 6, library streetscape along 11 Mile Road. As I mentioned, this is a complete added scope of work. It wasn't in the original scope, and it was a good process to get all 11 Mile done at this time. And that's a fair and reasonable price for all the work that they did. The only thing not included in change order 7, you'll see the handrails. We had to get handrail details worked out to reduce costs for what's happening in front of the library. And then there was a communications vault underground. As we were doing some of the work in the alley, we actually had to do piping around an existing communications vault that wasn't on any drawings. So that's reworking some piping coming around that vault. And then the library entrance handrails, that is a anodized aluminum handrail that goes up to the library entrance, and that's there for everyone's safety. And we had to get it's not priced out with 140 because we had to get some late design on that. And then we have Troy Street traffic signal power. Again, it was discussed to take all the traffic signal power at Troy and 11 Mile and have it run out of the parking deck. That's the best and most convenient and maintenance-wise location for the city. So that work was priced out there. Aluminum mullion supports, the type of mullion support in the parking deck. We had to add supports to it because it wouldn't hold up on its own in the way it's holding glass in some areas. It's not a design deficiency. It's something very specific to the manufacturer, and therefore it was the added cost. We have some reduced Second Street streetscape, and it's a credit of $10,000, and that's some of the concrete that's going to happen in between the Henry Ford Healthcare and the parking deck. We know that we don't want to put all the concrete that's in the design out there right now because because Clark's going to be doing the construction of the Henry Ford Healthcare building, and we would be spending good money after bad. More than likely, it would get broken and cracked up, and that's not necessary. So we're deleting that work, which will eventually get performed by Clark under that contract. And then spare electrical conduits underneath Troy Street. As we were taking the power out to 11 Mile and Troy Street, it really made sense because we were doing a excavation under the road. Let's put 2 4-inch spare conduits that go from the west side of Troy Street to the east side of Troy Street. That way, in the future, when you need some conduits, you don't have to dig up the road for $20,000 or $30,000. So it's really a future cost savings, and it made sense to go that route. I hope I've helped clarify some of the changes and that we don't see that this is just frivolous work. It is changes to their scope of work that happened on the job site. There's no loophole, as it was reported. That's not correct. They have a contingency in their contract for $100,000. That is for items that they may miss in their scope of work. None of these are missed items. These are all added scopes of work. Is there any questions I can answer for you?
Questions for Mr. Becker. Commissioner Lavasser.
Thank you. First, I note that there's some dates on the change orders, and I just wanted to get a sense whether those dates accurately reflect when these things came to light. So I'm looking at change order number 1 with the date of September 10th, 2018. Now, I'll wait for you to get there.
And I'm sorry. What's the date on it?
I see September 10th, 2018 at the top of change order number 1.
Yeah, those changes happened while we're in the ground and performing the foundation excavation. And then early on, to get the precast on time, the color change was made so we can make sure that we met everything on schedule.
Okay, so we were aware of these potential changes September 10th, 2018?
Yes, sir.
All right, and going on to change order number 2, I see September 24th, 2018. That's accurate?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then I see change order number 3 is November 20th, 2018.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we've progressed. I mean, we've got dates that I think the most recent's in January. First question, has this work already been done?
The majority of it, yes.
Okay. The second question, I don't know if you're the right person to ask, but I'm just wondering why these matters weren't brought to the commission's attention earlier.
I think you're right. I might not be the right person to ask.
Okay.
I can comment.
Sorry.
The change orders fell within the purchase order approved for the CM. So when we were able to batch enough towards the completion of the job where we needed to make an amendment to the GMP, we decided at that point we would do that, which is why we're here today.
Okay, but the way I'm interpreting this is where this body right here is being asked to basically rubber stamp decisions that have already been made. And that's a concern of mine, whether that's what's going on. I mean, can you describe it as anything other than a rubber stamp that you're asking for?
Knowing other projects that the city has worked on, it's my understanding that this is not atypical.
We've given authority to our staff, knowing that during construction, there are always changes, and you can't wait 4 weeks to get a soil remediation plan in place. I believe that it is under their, when we approve the contract and we approve the budget, they do have authority to work some change orders within the contingency.
Okay, but we are talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here. I mean, over $600,000 here. But let me move on, and I'll go back to Mr. Becker. You use some acronyms, and I'm familiar with them. I believe the people at the table are, but people who may be watching at home may not. You use the acronyms CM and GMP. Could you tell us what those are?
Construction management, guaranteed maximum price.
All right, and can you just describe what the differences are between those two?
Construction manager is the firm that we hired to manage the work. We went with a CMC, a construction management contractor, contract on it. And with the GMP is a guaranteed maximum price based on the scope of work that was priced out, was known at the time.
Okay. My understanding is the bid we requested when we placed these bids in February, we were looking for a construction manager at that time.
Yes, sir.
All right. And there was 4 bids placed, 3 of them that provided bids for nothing but being a construction manager. And the 4th, which is one that was adopted, which had the guaranteed maximum price.
A slight difference to that is actually all 4 of them provided a bid to do just CM, just to manage the work. But with that, Colasani, knowing that the deck was very similar to the Second Street deck, decided to provide a GMP for us to kind of guarantee the price of the scope of work based on the known scope.
Okay, now their proposal required us to utilize some of their subcontractors without bidding out those jobs to those subcontractors.
That's correct, some of them, yes.
Right. And I didn't get a sense, looking at the documents, what percentage of the job was already committed to those subcontractors. Do you have a feel for that?
Oh, it's probably 80%.
80%?
Yeah, because it's a precast deck, and the biggest chunk of cost is with the precast.
Okay, I also noted that they indicated that the other trades would be handled through the normal subcontracting process.
They did bid out a few trades per the City of Royal Oak requirements.
I don't recall, and I looked through the agendas ever since we approved this. I don't recall seeing that bids were submitted to us for approval.
That's correct, because it's within their GMP. They still followed all the city requirements, but it was within their GMP. So we didn't bring them to you because it was within their GMP.
Okay, so basically it was their discretion, not ours, who to hire at that point.
They followed all the City of Royal Oak's requirements as far as prevailing wage, and they went with the low bidders. I can provide that documentation to the city, and I may have, but I'll make sure I will provide that information. So you can see that it was followed that way.
Any other questions for Mr. Becker? Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I appreciate your walking us through this right now, but I will say that, I sent an email today asking some of these questions too, that it just seems like there's a lot that's going on here, and I do wish that it had been broken down for us a little bit more. And, you're talking about it being change orders, but it seems to me that we're a little bit conflating change orders with some of the contingency costs as well, because, I didn't order them to change the poor soil conditions. That was something they discovered and was different. So I guess to me, a change order is, hey, build us a new library streetscape. That I completely understand. That's something new. It was not part of the original design. We wanted that. We asked them to include it. They did. That seems to me different than some of these others, some of the other things that came up, including the soil, but also including the custom color. Like one thing that you said which shouldn't have been included is price increase in the marketplace. But then if someone terminated their production of the whatever it was that we were using and we had to buy some precast, that seems to be a marketplace problem that it falls on them. And this guaranteed maximum price, what exactly burdens did we shift to them? Like what would they have put on here that we would have turned away? Because it seems like everything they asked for, we gave them, and some of them seem to fall under these things that you said would not be included.
Particularly with the precast color, they provided us samples up front and showed what they could do. And it was preferred to have the samples match what they had on the other deck. They couldn't do that without providing a different aggregate, which was more expensive. To me, that is a pretty clear change to their scope of work because of the cost of the aggregate to make it match the same. It was proposed that way, and it's not, I can tell you, it's not to just increase their GMP, but it was to give you the product that you wanted. Now, the unforeseen conditions, they can't anticipate when soil's not good. And they excluded it they truly excluded it in their GMP proposal. They also made mention of the color change in the precast in their GMP proposal, as I read that to you. But you should have that information also in the recommendation we made, I think it was back in March of last year. Might have been April.
It was April, and
Okay.
the document that day was 400 and some pages. So, I mean,
I can get that information to you readily, so you don't have to hunt it. I can appreciate not looking through 400 pages of documents.
that'd be great. So to me, I wish this had been separated into two. One that was what seems to be easily agreed upon as a change order. And then some that I think we might have some more questions on. And it seems hard for us to do this at the table. To me, it seems appropriate to have a work session where we maybe understand some of these more. But I have the same sense that I don't know that we're actually providing any oversight. If these changes have been done, we don't get a chance to look at them until it's already in front of us to sign the check to pay for it. And we may have questions, and maybe they're stupid questions, but nonetheless, I think we deserve to have them answered about whether or not these do in fact fall in the scope of work, or they should have. And I understand that's why we have you here, but I think part of what you need to do is to explain this to us so that we have time to be able to explain it to other people. And I will also say one thing that concerns me about this generally is that what we're being asked to do here is the resolution to approve what's already been paid for. But then the second resolution is just to say, and then, go ahead and with the other 200,000, if anything else comes up, go ahead and sign out that too. And that's part of the concern that I have, is that it's basically like we're saying this 800,000, which we call a contingency, we're really planning to spend it. But that's not what a contingency is. And within our contract, in fact, we should have received some of the contingency back already, per my own reading of the contract, as it went along. Like, some of the contingency was earmarked to be returned to us. And it doesn't seem like that's happened, and now it's all gonna go to them. And I feel concerned that we're not able to do our oversight job properly. It's more of a statement than a question.
On the contingency, what they put in as $100,000 for their GMP contingency is like 0.6%. And we're used to, if we would have bid out the work, they would probably be at 5%, where it'd be about $700,000 of contingency within their GMP. So we have felt that it's such a low amount that, being like 0.6%, that it will be coming back. What they don't spend will be coming back to the city. We know we're $217,000 right now under budget. That's how much contingency got left. But we're still anticipating money coming back from Colasani. It's too hard to predict what that amount will be right now, but we'd like it to be in excess of $100,000. But again, I can't project that until the end of the job.
Commissioner Dubug. Yeah, I think those are all really good questions. What I'm curious about is in the industry, so say the soil issue, unanticipated circumstances, is that an oversight on our part? Should that have been something that we thought should have been checked as a part of the original bid, or is that something that would be completely unanticipated, that most contracts wouldn't have soil testing as a part of it?
In the industry, you can't determine where you're going to run into bad soil under a building. Right. We've got great soil here in Royal Oak. The sand is fantastic, but every now and then you're going to run into a spot where it just won't come up the bearing capacity you need for the building. Mm-hmm. So then you have to remove the poor soil, and you got to put in kind of like an engineered fill and compact it to where it meets the requirements. That's always concealed conditions are always excluded in contracts. I have yet to see one where it isn't. And I'll give you an example. This isn't Royal Oak, but it's Detroit. Mm-hmm. And you work anywhere around the arena, and what you're getting into is really poor soil conditions, where it's really got brick and mortar and concrete and other debris in it. Now here, we only ran into it, as you can see, in about 5 conditions on this project. We're lucky, but we also ran into some foundations out there. Mm-hmm. We also ran into unknown water mains and unknown communication vaults. and they're not on the drawing, so they can't plan for them.
Right.
So it's a fair situation that they run into these and they get compensated for it.
And that's why we have in our budget the contingency. When we talk about our budget, Mr. Becker, not the GMP, but in the budget, we put money aside as an estimate or as an insurance that these sort of things could happen. They may not, but they could, and that's why we had, aside from the GMP, which they bid on these standard set of conditions and excluded unconcealed issues, the budget, in our planning, we did consider that, hey, you may get, some soil conditions, we may uncover, Leif Erikson's or the Magellan was crashed here, and now it's an architectural site or an archaeological site. That's where our budget contingency is different from the GMP, correct?
That's correct. And going into the bidding, we had $400,000 as the owner's contingency on the project. But once we came in $850,000 under with the GMP, most of that money went up into the GMP, and then it also went to line items like paying for the 11-mile street signal and preparing for DTE costs. So we appropriated the budget, and that's where we came in at the $877,000 of contingency. And the reason it was that high is because of the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price of the contract.
So then there's questions about, how the expenses were paid for, decisions being made. Mr. Johnson, or maybe this is for you. Because we're running, under budget first, with regard to what this commission has authorized and on time, is that why, these things were just being done in real time? I'm just curious, what would the trigger be if there was an unanticipated, circumstance or a change order? What would the trigger be to bring it back before it's greenlit?
Not only under budget, we're under the purchase order that was approved by the city commission.
Right.
So the project is going along on target. We're using up some of the contingency, but we expected to.
Right.
I mean, that's why we budget for it.
Right. So what would be a trigger? Would it be if we find some dire circumstance that's gonna add $1 million and blow our contingency,
Well,
and we have to decide if we wanna move
found
forward?
something that was beyond what we had planned for financially to begin with, yes. If we found something that was actually really significant in its own right, yes. But this is a lot of relatively small things. The biggest items on here are ones that we knew about from the beginning, and actually are, provided for within the original contract, that there's going to be an adjustment.
Okay. And is any of these change orders, unanticipated circumstances, is any of this abnormal when building a building?
I have to say that it's not real abnormal, no.
Is there anything that's normal in building a building?
Yeah, it's, the concealed conditions is actually very typical for every job I've ever been on, from Florida to Canada to Michigan. You run into them. Oddball thing, I was building the Performing Arts Center in Charleston, South Carolina, and we ran across a set of 37 sets of human remains. That's a real oddball, but it happens.
Yeah, and that's definitely one that we would brought to your attention.
The other are, we knew the GMP documents weren't complete with Colasani's. And so we had contingency. We didn't know the exact scope of what the changes were going to be until we got them. And that's the $170,000. Then performing the 11-mile, the streetscape in front of the library, it makes complete sense construction-wise to get it done now while you've got everything on 11-mile. Instead of cordoning off 11-mile for 2 years in a row, we get it all done, and it's not costing the city any additional money. It was work we had planned, just not in the parking deck.
Right.
So it probably saves us money by getting it done sooner too, in reality. But no,
I agree.
In my experience, this isn't out of the norm. We're at what, 4% roughly?
Right.
That's my experience.
No, and my understanding from, I've spoken with, and kind of went over some of our contract with construction managers that work for some of the largest firms in the region, and all of them said what we have is incredibly competitive, and that these change orders are not abnormal, which gave me some ease. I mean, I of course trust you very much as well, but to talk to some other people in the industry who kind of laughed and said, well, yeah, of course, that's why you have contingency, because things always come up. You actually do kind of plan to spend your contingency because things always happen. And you hope to come in, and we're coming in under budget, we're coming in on time. So, I mean, I feel okay about this. I understand the changes. I understand the circumstances. None of this seems beyond the pale to me.
So maybe, Mr. Becker, you know, if I were to try to relate it to maybe a more personal experience, what I see here is we have a situation, let's say any one of us were renovating our kitchen, right? And we go out, we get bids, and they come back, and we select a contractor that's high quality, that's experienced, and says, okay, I have a guaranteed maximum price of $15,000. And then as we go on, we sign the deal, we move forward, we decide that we're gonna upgrade our countertops. We're gonna go with granite, okay? So we put a change order in. It's not incumbent upon that contractor to absorb the costs of the changes that we proposed, right? So there's an extra couple $1,000s now on top of that $15,000. During the course of the work, let's say the kitchen contractor lifts up the floor and all the floorboards are rotten and everything like that, something concealed that he didn't see when he did the bid, and it wasn't in the requirements to replace the floorboards, but they need to be fixed and replaced. So that's gonna be another couple $1,000s. Well, let's say our family budgeted $20,000 for the project. The bid came in at 15. We made some changes to add granite, some increase, like we see with the library and some of these other really nice features with the alley that were driven by, you know, the Henry Ford Hospital building to really make that space beautiful and take advantage of that opportunity, things of that nature. And then on top of it, the floorboards, you know, let's say whatever they were, I said $1,000. So now we're at an $18,000 project, but we're still below the budget of $20,000 because we thought, hey, there might be things we want to do. Is that a very relatable scenario to really take all this complexity in a nutshell? If I had to have an elevator speech, would that be inaccurate to compare such a story to this?
You've pretty much nailed it. We knew we were going to have changes. Some things we could have anticipated, and don't take that word wrong, the $170,000, we knew we were going to have design changes to get the documents up, and we didn't have them at bid time. So we knew that was going to happen, just couldn't foretold what the value was. The 11-mile streetscape, the alley concrete, changes to lights and how you want them wired, those are the kind of things that we can't anticipate, but they make sense. The unforeseen conditions you can never anticipate, and to think that's in any contractor's GMP is so against contract. It's not in any contractor's GMP. Never seen it in my 35 years. They happen, and it happens on every job.
Mayor?
Commissioner Douglas.
So if I may, building on the example you just gave, your example did not start, though, with a scope of work and specifications. And that, to me, is the crucial element of what we're talking about here. The city wrote a scope of services. Here's what we want. And, you know, we said, we're assuming, our scope assumes that the floorboards underneath the linoleum are sound. And so your contractor came in, Colasanti came in and said, look, here's the chunk of stuff we're gonna do. Materials, trades, anticipation of tariffs. We're gonna do this thing and charge you $900,000 less than you had budgeted. But they said, here are the things we're not gonna do. Elevators, I mean, there are other elements of it that they said, you're gonna do that on your own. And our scope of work, I'm sure, assumed a certain texture of soil. And I'm sure their contract says, well, okay, we're trusting that the soil is like this. If it isn't, you're gonna pay for it. And it wasn't, and we did. So to me, it's the scope of services that their bid is based on. And Mr. Becker has said already that we knew that our scope of services was going to include, for example, additional construction drawings, and planned accordingly, even though we hadn't priced those out yet. So that, I mean, it's the scope that I think that we look at here to see if the extra things that are being done were already within the scope of services or were design changes after we wrote that scope, and it seems to me that they are.
Commissioner Macy?
So I'm willing to be convinced by Commissioner Douglas on that and on every other item on this list, but not in the time that we have right here tonight. And I guess that's what my concern is. This is quite a lot to put in front of us, and I have a lot of questions, and I just wish we had had more time. I wish we do have more time to go through some of these questions, because you're saying, hey, maybe in the scope of work it said, type of soil is expected to be this. We will pay more if not. But I didn't find that, and I spent some time looking at the contract today. So I'd like to see more if we're actually going to be a body that does oversight for this $659,000. It seems like we should be looking at it a little more closely, and I wish we could. But I do also have a few more questions. One is, what would come out of their contingency as opposed to our contingency? Like, what that came up would apply to them?
If they made a buyout error, as in, let's say they missed buying out, I gotta think, doors, a pretty obvious thing. That's in documents, you gotta have them, but they missed in the buyout, they would, out of their contingency, pay for those doors. There may be market changes during their buyout that would come up, and they would pay for those also. And then, let's say they had an insurance claim and it didn't get fully compensated, something happened on the site, something got damaged, they would pay for those things out of their contingency.
Basically, they're saying the cost of the project, but we're gonna give ourselves a little wiggle room in case we missed something in the project of 100,000. So instead of being 14,900,000, we're gonna make it 15 million, knowing we have a little buffer just in case we miss something as the contractor.
And I want to really refer back to $100,000 on a $16 million or $15 million contract is a very small contingency in their GMP.
Have they used it at all?
Excuse me?
Have they used any of it?
Have
they used any of it, of their 100,000?
I think only in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. They haven't used very much yet. So I'm anticipating, and I don't know of any issues out there right now. I'm anticipating, 50 to 60 coming back to the city.
Okay. My next question is, how did the GMP, which we selected, I think partially based on the fact that it was a GMP, compare to the other bids that weren't GMPs at that time?
We did ask for probable cost estimates in our RFP. We know we didn't have full documents, so we couldn't get a solid number out of the bidders. So we asked for probable cost estimates. And I think 3 of the 4 were over 16 million, with the top being about 16.8. And all that is a guess at the marketplace. Mm-hmm. An average probably is about 16.2 or 16.3. And that doesn't include any of the changes we talked about, like colored concrete, 11-mile work. So they were all well in excess of what the GMP number was that we got from Colasani.
Okay. My last question is...
That's actually in some of the recommendations also. We can get that to you if you need it.
Okay. And also, this is kind of a second-guessing question at this point, but it is a little surprising that the $170,000 seems like a lot for construction documents for a building that's very similar to one that they just built. And I know you gave me a long list of things that were slightly different about it. How much did we pay for the construction documents on the post office parking garage? Do you know?
Post office?
Or the Senate?
And I'm sorry, but that's something I don't know.
Okay.
But with the type of changes, when they increase the generator size and the amps going to the generator, that's probably a $30,000 item just by itself. Then there's a lot of underground work, and there's a number of things that, the same thing with the 2 units on top of the elevator shafts. Now that you have to, have conditioned space there, that was something that wasn't anticipated. And that's about a $30,000 cost too.
I think to clarify that, these aren't actual construction documents from the architect. These are changes to the project made as a result of those documents being completed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They're not actual,
They're not architectural
They're not
drawing costs,
architectural
they're the
okay.
things that came with, once we completed the drawings and said, look, we need this generator done, we need these sort of
okay,
things
okay.
done, they're the
All right, I was thinking.
physical
that- I was thinking the
attributes
other.
that had to be incorporated due to site differences.
But the actual architect drawings would be into that overall project budget of 18.1. That's where that is slotted. in.
Okay.
So that's why that's separate from the construction budget.
That's right, I didn't clarify it. There are no design costs in any of these changes, no design cost.
Colasanti's not the designer.
Okay.
Rich is.
Yeah. And there's no cost for Rich and Associates on any of these changes. It's strictly to complete the drawings and what was changed on the completed drawings. Or added.
Wait, how could, they don't charge us to, when we we make a change, they don't charge us to change the design?
No, they had to complete their design and that's what they did.
Or did they want to be our CM? No.
No.
Rich was contracted to do a design for the new structure. It's very similar to the one that's already been built, but it's not exactly the same. And the cost here is the construction cost difference because Colasanti and the other bidders used the specs from the other structure for doing their bids.
Right. I got that. I didn't misunderstand the question. I'm just surprised if there are in fact design changes that we're requesting that those are coming free of charge. It's nice to have something coming free of charge.
I don't think it's free of charge. I think it's just part of what we're paying the designer.
The design charges were already in Rich and Associates' scope of work. They just finished their scope of work, and we had put out our RFP for the CM services ahead of those documents being done, so we could move the schedule along, get people lined up and move forward.
We knew that they were gonna be almost identical structures with some changes, and as you can see, at least in that scope, 170,000 on 15.5 million, it was worth it to get those bids moving, and then, have people like PMC dissect those construction charges and make sure they're reasonable and rational for the additional changes to keep the bids moving quickly. Commissioner Prush.
I don't have any problem with any of the items that are in any of these change orders because they're very typical. They've happened in this community before with some of other much earlier building projects. We're an old community with old stuff underground, and none of this is surprising. But if there's members of the commission who are nervous about having them bundled all together over a period of, like 6 months of change orders, would it be appropriate for you all as staff and as contractors to, on a going forward basis, as we finish this project and then get into the City Hall project and then also the police station, that you alert us on a going forward basis of change orders that are going to be happening? Not necessarily that we need to approve them, because clearly if they're within the contingency and they're within the scope of the contract, we've already approved all that kind of stuff. But just so that we don't run into another situation where they're kind of bundled into a 6-month period like this, just so that we have more of a heads up. So if we do have questions on a going forward basis, we can ask them and get that answered so that we don't have the issues that Commissioner Macy is raising. I don't think she's questioning necessarily the necessity of any of this stuff. It's the fact that it's just all kind of overwhelming at this point in time. And because it is overwhelming, you have this instance where people who have, their own motives out there who are gonna make this into some huge issue because it's an election year, they have that opportunity to do this. It would be easier, I think, for the community to understand that this is the normal course of business in a construction project if we were on like maybe a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis to say, okay, guess what? These are the change orders that are happening on the City Hall project because, guess what we discovered when we put the hole in the ground there? So is that something that you all could do? So that it's not such a big surprise at this point in something like this?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, I think that would really help. I think the scope of what was presented tonight, led to a lot of this confusion and led to a lot of the hysteria that's out there. And I think it also led to a lot of difficulty for us to kind of process it all. But I definitely think it's all justified. But I think there might be, on a going forward basis, a way for us to exert our oversight process that we need to do without slowing down the project. And I don't think it doesn't necessarily be a motion every other month like this.
Just an FYI.
But just a heads up that this is what's happening and this is why it's happening. Because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen with the police station, it's gonna happen with City Hall. You're gonna run into things that you never anticipated. It's like renovating an old house, as the mayor said. You think you're gonna renovate your kitchen and you open up a wall and you think, oh my gosh, how did they do that? Or why did they do that? It happens, it happens. It happened with the courthouse project. It happened with the Etkin building, even though that wasn't our building. It happened with the building where Howard and Howard are at Lafayette and 4th. Guess what? There were underground storage tanks underneath there, and the city ended up being liable for the cleanup to the tune of like $3 million. Big surprise, it happens. So, but I think if we are alerted to those things on a going forward basis, on a more regular basis, I think it would just help us. And I think it would also help the public understand that this is the way construction is done. We haven't done a big construction project as a city for 40 years, so this is new. But it's pretty typical.
I just wish the public was here to see it.
Yeah, you know, they all left. I'm sure they're.
Which makes me question the intent of
Well, sure,
some of the.
absolutely.
But I think here too, I just wanted to give some comments too about the oversight, because I think Commissioner Macy brings up a good point, and I have a little bit different perspective on the oversight. I think that for a while now, we've had Plant Moran Cressa as our owner's rep, and we hired them, and they've, been 100% on our side. I mean, they are here to defend, protect us. They know more about construction and real estate than any of us all combined ever for eternity, including our great-grandchildren. So I do make sure, I want to make sure that we do have oversight over them, and that, at this point in time, I don't have a lack of confidence in the job that they've been doing over the last number of years. Let's keep in mind the project's under budget, and right now it's predicted to be $200,000 under budget. And that these costs are about 4% of the overall cost, which is already built into the contingency, which even with these 4%, which is a small amount, we're still under budget and the project's on time. So from an oversight perspective, I don't know that I need to necessarily deal with a $279 overage. I appreciate the helpful explanation with some of the big ticket items here, some of them with the library we were aware of. But from an oversight perspective, I have the confidence that our team, from the city attorney, Kerr Russell, PMC, Todd Fenton, Don Johnson, and everybody else in between, is doing a good job because we're meeting the goals that we set out to meet. We have a project, we bid it out, it's under budget, it's on time. We all know these changes happen. The fact that they're contained to 4%, we're still $200,000 under budget predicted, to me says I have confidence in what they're doing until I don't. So if this came back, they're 30% over, the budget's blown, the GMP, had all these loopholes in it, which it did not, then I would have a concern, and I'd say we need to sit down and figure out what's wrong on our team's side. But I don't necessarily see anything wrong with what we're doing right now. In fact, I think I'm surprised at the fact that, folks aren't applauding the great work and effort here done by our staff to make sure that we stay under budget with this project. It's rare in government that you find things done on time, done competently, and done under budget. So let's not lose scope of that. But that's just my perspective on oversight. Commissioner Macy.
So I appreciate that from Mayor and from Commissioner Perush, always is the voice of wisdom here. And I think, as a new commissioner, or am I still new? One of the newer commissioners, this is a new type of thing for me, a new analysis. But I still have the questions, and I still feel like having a big vote like this, when I don't feel like I can defend some of these because I don't have the information, I wish that I did, and I apologize again. I apologized already via email that I didn't get all these in a timely fashion to get them through last week when we discussed them. I didn't have time to kind of delve into it until this weekend. And so this morning when I was looking at this and thinking, boy, I still have a lot of questions. I just wish, I love Commissioner Perush's suggestion about being updated as we go, but I don't feel comfortable with this tonight. I wish we could push it off so that we could have a little more time to discuss some of the items that I feel uncertain about yet. I do. Of course, I trust them, but I still feel like I have a responsibility here at the table to make sure that I understand what we've done as a city. So I don't feel comfortable with this, and I wish we had a little more time.
Well, we have two resolutions in front of us.
I'll make a third.
Maybe that's the question. Is this time sensitive?
Be nice to pay the people for some of the work they've done. That's the real item out there is to pay people for what they've done. And yes, I understand it's taken a while to get here. And I really, one question I have is, would you want information quarterly? Would you want it every 2 months? You know, how would you like that? Because we can easily provide it to what you think is beneficial to you. You might think monthly's inundating you, but I'm not. How do you want it? But when you say time sensitive, it'd be nice to pay the contractors.
Okay. I think moving forward, I mean, we have a lot of reports that we file and receive. So, you know, if you did updated it once a month, like the second meeting of the month, we had sort of a running update, you know, that might work for commissioners here. And if they have questions, they can pull it off and ask questions.
We can do that.
You know.
Once a month, sure.
I don't see any objection. Just a report, so if you are volunteering to do it, we don't have to give you direction. But right now, we are at a position where this is the process that we followed, and, you know, contractors at some point need to get paid. So the question on the table right now that I hear from Commissioner Macy is, you know, whether or not we have confidence in our team that these numbers are accurate enough to move forward, or that we need to, you know, if she has additional questions, you know, and the risk of delaying the payment. Commissioner Gibbs?
I don't know that waiting 2 weeks, or 2 weeks, the end of February, would be an extremely long time for them to wait for their payment until we were able to get the follow-up information that Commissioner Macy and they said they would provide. I have a lot of questions too, and you know, I have a regular job, and I can't spend all day going through these things on my phone because I can't pull it up on my work computer, and it just makes it difficult to be able to review everything and see everything and go over it. So at least a 2-week delay would be great, so we can get the follow-up information and, you know, educate ourselves.
Commissioner Dubug?
Well, I understand that concern. I have a day job as well that's incredibly demanding, but I also have a very competent and skilled and experienced staff that we have given clear direction to on this project. I think the questions have all been answered pretty clear. I don't think anyone's going to give me a degree in construction management, nor do I want one. I have a job, and I want to let you do yours. I think that these expenses fall well within the direction that's already been given, again, under budget, on time, and I think we should keep things moving forward because there's no indication that we shouldn't pay these folks for their work. So I'll move for approval of both resolutions. In the
Motion by Commissioner Dubug. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? Commissioner Perush.
There's just a couple of other things that the public needs to understand going forward with this particular building, this particular project. I know there were some allusions to some of the public comments that, oh, you know, this is taxpayer money and, you know, the taxpayers are getting stuck with this. It's very, very, very important that we exert oversight and make sure that all of the money is spent appropriately. But it's also important to remember that this particular building, the parking structure, is being funded by revenue bonds that were sold that are supported by parking fees. They were not general fund bonds. No taxpayer money is going into this project. These are not general fund taxes. This is being funded by the parking fees that everyone pays and will continue to pay for the life of the bonds. This is parking revenue bonds. We have to manage that and look over it and make sure that it's spent appropriately, just as much as general fund monies. But this is not supported by general fund tax money. That's not what this money is coming from, and that's not what is paying for the structure. I fully support paying the people that need to be paid under these contracts. I think all of the costs are appropriate based upon the other projects that have taken place in the city. I understand for those of you who are new to this process, it's big, there's a lot of details, but I have confidence in the people that we've hired to do this job. And for those reasons, I'm going to support this motion.
Commissioner Macy?
Well, I feel sad because I wish we'd come to some other thing, because I'm not going to support this motion, and I don't want to make it seem like I don't trust our staff. I just feel like I have a responsibility and I'm not able to do it tonight. So
Commissioner Lavasser?
I'm not going to support this motion either, and I've got a couple concerns. First, I don't believe it's the role of this body to be rubber stamps to approve hundreds of thousands of dollars after the fact, after the money's already essentially been spent. That's not the way this process is supposed to work. It's supposed to come to us in advance. We either approve it or disapprove it, or we express concerns with the direction. Commissioner Perush has it right. We do have an obligation to watch over these dollars. Whether they're tax dollars or parking fund dollars, we still have that obligation, and certainly it is our objective to try to keep costs down. It has to be our objective to try to keep expenses down so that we don't have to raise parking expenses through the roof to pay for excessive expenditures. Along those same lines, I have other concerns here. I note that back in November of 2017, it was brought up by one of the members of the public, there was a request from staff that we simply give this contract to Calisante without seeking outside bids. That was in November of 2017. It was pulled off the agenda, never voted upon. And then we have a bid process for a construction manager. That's not the type of contract we ended up with. We didn't end up with a construction management contract. We ended up with something very different where we're given very little discretion. We're not asked to participate in the choosing of any of the subcontractors, which you'd expect under a construction management arrangement. It's kind of like there was an end round to get the no bid contract to Calisante, but make it look like a bid contract. And I've got a problem with that. As indicated by Mr. Becker, it's not anticipated that we're going to be given a packet of bids to look at. That's an additional concern. And for the other reasons as stated, I just can't support the motion here tonight.
Commissioner Dubuck?
Sorry, I just have to say, well, I think most of us are used to, political attacks from the public, but what Mr. Lavasser just said impugns the integrity of every single person on our staff who works every day to move our city forward, and basically said that they have willfully and deliberately broken the law for no reason, actually, to align himself with a conspiracy theory. So I think that needs to be called out, that is completely inappropriate to make a baseless accusation against staff like that.
Commissioner Gibbs?
I was just going to follow up and say that I will not be supporting this motion at all, or this approval of this in any way, shape, or form.
I'll just say, I heard the word rubber stamp used. In no way is there a rubber stamp, because I've heard individuals up here that'll be voting against it, and some voting for it, some for reasons that are understandable, some for reasons I can't comprehend. But no matter, it's not a rubber stamp. We've had the information. We've had it for a while. We had the information explained to us tonight from Mr. Becker. So for me, yes, like Commissioner Dubuck, probably like everybody here, we all have very demanding jobs. You guys get paid $20 for the privilege of sitting here tonight for countless hours, not to mention all the hours you put in, preparing for this meeting. I can tell you, I do get paid $40. I get paid double for tonight's, so I have a little less argument here. But yeah, it's tough. And you know what? I will go over these documents. They come to us on Tuesday. The agenda is published on Thursday. I spend many nights not watching TV. I tuck my kids into bed, and I get to work. And so I spend many mornings getting up early and going over this material. I spend time asking staff questions. making sure that I'm prepared for the meeting. And I'm not saying anyone here isn't prepared, but the capacity of our job is this is not supposed to be a 110-hour work week. We have, our primary responsibility is to hire the very best professionals we can hire. You have Plant Moran Cressa as an owner's rep, that their name is on a building, their name is on our documents. I believe, notwithstanding any sort of conspiracy that they're out to get us and bilk us through some sort of conspiracy through Colasanti or whatever it may be, I think that, we're getting a good project here. The project's on time, under budget. It's within the contingencies that we've been talking about. The changes we knew a little bit ahead going into it because we want to move fast. We want to minimize the disruption to the public when it comes to parking. And so here is a good story. And at this point, I don't know that me hearing anything more from Mr. Becker as far as the changes, I'm not an expert in what a handrail should cost. So whether it's $31,000 or $28,000 or $42,000, I'm going to trust the folks that went through a bidding process. They got the numbers, and we're going to have a wonderful garage delivered on time, under budget, with even more enhancements than committed to the public. So we're going to have a beautiful alleyway, a great entrance. And then, there's a few things in here. Okay, maybe we shouldn't have spent the $4,000 to save $50,000 down the road, but I think it's good if we have the money in the budget to spend those sort of things on utilities to make sure that we're setting future generations up to keep their expenditures lower. I think that's just good fiscal responsibility. So I'll be supporting this. I respect everyone's argument, but I think, we've been up here for a number of years, and we've seen a lot of construction projects come in, and, I think that these costs are reasonable, budgeted for, and they've been vetted by anybody who knows anything about construction, especially those that we employ to do it. So with that, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
I see a hand of the nays. We have 3 nays, 4 ayes. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Becker. Thank you, Mr. Fenton. Thank you. All right, it's 10:30. Everyone good? Should we take a 2-minute break, or?
I think so.
Mr. Lavasser, got retie your tie? All right, I'm gonna call for a quick recess for 10 minutes for those who need to use the washroom. We'll get back to business. 10 minutes stat. All right, we're gonna bring the meeting back to order, which brings us to item numbers 12 and 13. Related to community engagement strategy, the legalization of marijuana, and the prohibition of marijuana establishments ordinance first reading. These two are really kind of connected in the same dialogue, so we can open up discussion on either or for this. But what I'll first do before we do that, Ms. Davids.
Hi.
Hi. Would you like to kick it off for us?
Sure. So as we know, in November, Royal Oak voters approved the legalization of adult use marijuana by a wide margin. It was 69 to 31%, and the voter turnout was very high. This body asked us to come up with a community engagement strategy to get input from the public just on how they view the legalization of marijuana in our community, what that might look like here. So what we would like to do is we'd like to tentatively schedule a work session. We've got all the rooms reserved, so we just need for you to say yes. But that would take place on March 4th at 6:30 p.m. in this room. We've arranged to have some overflow facilities. We don't necessarily expect a large turnout, but if we do have a large turnout, we want to make sure we can accommodate anybody that wants to be here. We'll also broadcast it obviously on WROK Live, and then we have made plans to not only live stream it on our website, but do like a Facebook Live event so people can comment and give input so we can kind of see where people are. The presentation will include 3 experts. One is Craig Arnoff. He's a local attorney that specializes in cannabis law and cannabis-related businesses. His presentation will be on the overview of marijuana laws and businesses. And then we have Laura Bassett. She represents municipalities dealing with cannabis issues, and her presentation will be marijuana use on publicly owned land. She can also address any other topics that you might have for her. And then finally, our very own Chief O'Donohue will talk about the impact on law enforcement. We have made arrangements to allow people, I know in public comment, somebody had a really good question about marijuana and you know, how and how, you know, it works in terms with the federal government and things like that. So we'll have a way for people to submit questions in advance. We'll take those questions and try to combine them all and give them to our experts so that when they come that night, they're prepared to answer questions. They don't have to say like, you know, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that. We want it to be as informative as possible. But having said that, the more I learn on this topic, the more questions I have. So I don't know if we'll get away with just one work session, but that's our goal, is to answer as many questions as possible. And then what we'd like to do is we'd like to do a scientific survey. We'd like to use Cobalt Community Research. They're a nonpartisan, nonprofit. The reason we're suggesting them is we want to get like a unbiased sampling. So Cobalt would be responsible for this questionnaire design to make sure that it's not biased in any way, the sampling, the data collection, analysis, and reporting. It wouldn't be me coming back and reporting on a survey, it would be them. And we feel the scientific survey is the best way, number one, to reach older residents who don't, I mean, some older residents are like rock stars on social media, and then others don't have computers. So we want to make sure that we reach everybody, especially our older residents, to make sure that we get their input on this issue. And again, when Cobalt does the sampling, they make sure that they get, you know, the right demographic representing everybody. And they would draw, they would send out the survey to 3,000 people, and those 3,000 people, we would get those names and addresses from the city clerk of people that voted in the November election. And there is a cost to doing the survey. It's about $5,600. But I think it's well worth it, because I think we want to hear what the average person thinks about this. Now, and I'm worried that if we do an online survey on this issue, that we'll hear a lot of passionate people, and some may not even live in Royal Oak. Anyways, that's my recommendations. There's some resolutions for you to look at. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from Ms. Davids? Commissioner Lavasser.
I want to ask a question about the 3,000, because I don't know if that is an anticipation of certain margin of error or a certain return rate, but that certainly could impact the cost. If we could achieve essentially the same thing at say 2,000 instead of 3,000, but save the cost, I think knowing what the margin of error anticipated would be helpful for us. In that
That's a really good question. The reason, so on our normal citizen satisfaction survey, they sample 1,500 people, and they do it in waves. So they start out with a list of 1,500 people, and then they send out a letter, and then if people don't respond, they send out another letter, but they're dealing with 1,500. So to get the right size return so that the survey is valid and we have a big enough sampling, he's recommending 3,000, but we would just do one wave of letters. Does that make sense? He feels that's how many we need to send out to make sure we get the right number of responses back. Because we're trying to shorten. When you do the waves, it takes a lot longer because they send out the letters and they wait, and then they send out more letters.
Did he indicate a anticipated rate of response and what the margin of error would be on the survey?
So typically we send out Typically, we do, like, if my memory is right, we send out 1,500 letters, and we get back about 325 is all. But that's enough for it to be considered
Right.
like a sign, like a.
I mean, theoretically, the student T distribution is 36, and you can get meaningful results with a sample of 36 randoms.
Yeah, so that's how William Santamore explained it to me, that to get the number that we want, he'd have to send out more surveys.
Yeah, I'm simply looking to see if we may be able to get that number down and still have some results that we can count on that would be reliable.
Yeah, I think I'll talk to him about that, because I think that you might be right on that, because we plan to do a lot of well, not that we don't do it when we do the citizen satisfaction thing, but because this is so important and complex, we plan to do a lot of stuff on Facebook and stuff like that. So maybe people will anticipate getting the surveys. And we've already heard some people that are either pro or against it that are gonna also help us, by telling people, you might get a survey, make sure you fill it out and stuff like that. So we might get a good response just with, like, are you thinking like 1,500?
Well, I don't know the answer there. That's something
I mean, that's the number of 3,000 isn't my number.
Ms. Davids, I also see here the total price is $56.50 for their services.
Mhm.
Are we paying for the postage of the 3,000?
That includes everything.
So you cut it in half at 40 cents, you're talking $700. I mean, I don't know, maybe we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but if Cobalt recommends 3,000 and we're just talking about postage, the
Mhm.
majority of the cost is their fixed cost to administer the survey, send it out, interpret the results, and present it to us, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that number does include mailing costs.
Commissioner Gibbs?
Cobalt is they do the consumer,
The citizen satisfaction?
survey. So that comes out about, it comes out in waves. You already said that. That comes out about October of voting years, correct? Odd numbered years, correct?
Correct.
We're going to be doing that earlier.
Oh,
We're trying to get it away from the election.
Right, and I appreciate that, but I received one in 2017, and it was a postcard, number one. It wasn't a letter, so there's a reduction in the,
It wasn't
it wasn't a letter, it was a postcard. And I remember not knowing that it was something I should pay attention to, because it was very blah, it was very boring, and it was, my recollection is I actually brought it into Ms. Hollis and I said, is this real? And was told, maybe, well, that was a long time ago.
I'm going to ask about that. I don't know.
But I remember discussing this, and not to cut you off, but I remember discussing this at our planning meeting that we had, or our discussion, or the results of that survey, that it was very generic.
And it was a survey?
And it was I think it was a link, and I think I tried to do it from my phone, and I couldn't do it from my phone, so I had to go to the computer, do it at work or home, I don't remember now, but,
So my guess is that, I know they show us the letter they send out, and I don't have any reason to not believe they don't send out like a 6-page letter. My guess is that you may have missed the first survey, and the postcard was a reminder, and just giving you a link, because you can either fill out the paper survey and send it in, or you can do it online.
Okay.
So my guess is you might have missed the paper survey for mistaking it for junk mail, maybe?
well,
Maybe.
but if it's very generic, if it was very
Yes.
generic, that would be something, or maybe you should have a City of Royal Oak return address on it instead of Cobalt Survey or Cobalt Community Research.
No, those are really good points. And I just want to mention that we thought about combining this survey with the citizen survey, because we're always allowed to ask a couple questions on the citizen survey. But the questions that we want to ask take up like 2 pages. So he suggested that we do it separately, because if you get a survey that's too long, you just get like questionnaire fatigue or something like that. You just won't do it. You'll stop halfway through. So by piecing it out and making it a small survey just on one topic, he thought we'd get a better result. So.
Commissioner Pruish? I guess to follow up on that, I guess I would want to make sure that it's easily identifiable from the envelope itself, that this is city business, that this is not just some random survey company out there. Because my tendency would be the same as maybe what happened to Commissioner Gibbs. Some survey company, yeah, I don't care, and I will toss it out. I won't open the envelope. So I think it really needs to be identified very, very clearly on the outside before anybody, takes a letter opener to it, that this is in fact important city business, and it's not just, a random company.
I'll ask what they can put on the outside to, differentiate it from junk mail.
Yeah.
Like using I think they do use our logo, but maybe there's some wording that says like a survey inside.
Official City of Royal Oak survey or something.
That might be why your return is only 300 for the 1,500 that they mail out.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my suggestion.
That's a good point. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Macy.
So I agree with you that I'm worried that it's probably going to take more than one work session, and I wonder if maybe it should be a little longer because it only gives us an hour. Or wait, is it before a city commission meeting or not?
No, it's between
okay.
city commission meetings.
Okay, all right. Well, then
yeah,
there
that's
goes
why we
that
chose the Monday because we figure you all don't make plans on Monday. So
every other Monday. And then my other question was about for the questions. You have to submit them in advance, or can people ask like on the spot?
We'll make arrangements for people to ask on the spot, but to be honest, what we find is when people write their questions on the spot, it's hard to read them. It's also hard to, you'll get multiple questions, and it's hard to like on the fly quickly, sort them out. So that's why we're asking people to type in their questions so that we can read them. And then also we can do the work before the meeting of like, getting reducing the number of questions, like getting rid of duplicate questions.
Yeah. I wonder if it might make sense, if you have time, to publish them either before or during the meeting, the questions that you're going to ask, so that people know what's coming, and then if they have an additional question, then they could submit those.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I know we were planning on sharing the questions in advance with the experts so that they would be prepared to answer them. They wouldn't be surprised or need to get back to us. So, but that's a good idea.
Ms. Davids, I had a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize if I missed it because we're getting into the 11th hour here. The survey results will be returned when? When do we think we'll get those answers back?
He said it would take 4 weeks.
So we wouldn't have them back by the time we commence the town hall or whatever.
Oh, no, we're going to do the education before we send out the survey.
Okay.
I think that's really critical that people know exactly, guess what they're talking about, because it's going to, we're going to ask them
you want to have a
specifically
conversation based on thoughtful consideration of all the facts.
One of the heaviest lifts is explaining to people like the 6 types of marijuana-related businesses there are, and what's a processor, what's a testing facility, what retail looks like. We want to be able to show, we've already started a web page, but we want to add imagery of what these things look like, and try to be, make it as simple as possible so that people understand what it is they're commenting, what they're giving their opinion of.
Right, and then what's
So
within
that's why we want to do the
jurisdiction of this
education
body.
first. And
Actually, Mayor, we wanted to wait until after at least the first community engagement session to finalize the survey.
Okay.
Because we may very well have additional questions we want to ask as a result of this.
Good point. Good point, yeah.
Yeah, we've already been working on the survey and making the questions as easily,
Or someone will actually respond to them.
yes, and making it so they're understandable, taking away some of the big terms and reducing it down to an easy reading level, short sentences, so that we have a high turnout of people and they understand what it is. Because if you read the law, it's very confusing. When we describe all the businesses using like the exact verbiage of the law, no one understands what we're talking about. So And we haven't been doing that. Cobalt has been working on that, so.
Commissioner Gibbs?
It's good to know that you have Craig Aronoff doing this. I've known him for a long, long time. He and I actually went to law school together. I'm aging myself because I look a lot younger than him. He's not here, so I can say that. And I'm going to tell him to watch it too. But no, he's very knowledgeable, and he's very good at answering the questions. He's done it before. He's done it for me before, so that'll be great.
We agree completely. We're very impressed with him. He really simplifies it so that people understand.
Right.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, we have a plan here articulated very well by Ms. Davids, our community engagement specialist, that outlines not only a community forum to discuss this topic, but also a survey to help inform us as to, some of the outstanding questions related, or at least after the vote took place here in Royal Oak. And so we can have a successful path moving forward as it relates to this new set of laws. So the resolutions are here. Commissioner Douglas, I see, I'm pretty sure you're not waving to high-five me. You're ready
I
to
could
make a
do that,
motion?
but I'm instead going to move the resolutions as presented.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Douglas, support by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Davids. As usual, great work. All right, this brings us to item number 13, which is the prohibition of marijuana establishments ordinance. I just want to be clear to everybody here in the press. The previous item we talked about, because obviously we want a little bit more community input to understand how we execute the will of the voters. However, there are some just say, Mr. Wolf, you're speaking a little loudly. It's kind of being a distraction up here. So we now, as a commission, had decided in the past that in the event that something were to happen out of the state legislature that we were unfamiliar with, or that gave us consternation, that we would have to opt out until we figured out what was best for Royal Oak. We directed our city attorney to construct an ordinance here for our consideration. And so I just want to make sure, there's been some publications that have got it completely wrong. The city of Royal Oak has not opted out of this, of the statute. But as an assurance, we are considering an ordinance here to keep in our back pocket. But I'll let the city attorney talk a little bit more about it. But I just wanted to clear up the confusion, okay? We're having a public input session. We're going to look at how and what and where we regulate these facilities, but just in case there's something that happens preemptively from the state we're unprepared for, we do want to have an ordinance that will allow us to have some time to make sure we do what's right for Royal Oak. So, Mr. Gillen.
Thank you, Mayor. That was actually a decent summary of what I was going to say. You'll recall that staff in the Community Development Department had come forward with a recommendation that the city opt out of the adult use or recreational marijuana establishments, at least until we had more information from the state as to the type and extent of regulation that the state was going to be putting in place. Based upon that recommendation from staff, as you indicated, I was asked to draft an ordinance to opt out for your consideration. Based upon some feedback I've gotten from some members of the commission, including comments during a work session that we had earlier, I drafted ordinances that are very similar but different in one significant term. The two ordinances I've prepared that are attached to the commission memo would both opt out from medical marijuana establishments under the initiated law. The one does not have an expiration date. The other, on the other hand, would sunset as of July 1st of next year, 2020. So that would give the state basically 16 months, give or take, to get their framework in place and for us to evaluate that framework and decide at that point in time, or actually prior to that point in time, if we wanted to continue to opt out, or if we wanted to opt in under different circumstances. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm comfortable with either one of these ordinances. Which one you may choose to go forward with is going to be up to you.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Mr. Gillum, how confident are you that the state's going to have their framework in place by July 1st, 2020?
More confident than I am that they'll have their framework in place by December of this year when they're supposed to have it in place. Yes.
All right, so that's a qualified confidence, if I'm understanding it.
Very qualified.
All right,
yes.
if we get to the point and the state has not gotten their framework to us, I imagine we're going to need to have that framework by early 2020 if we're going to meet this deadline, I would presume. If we need to extend this, does that process take 2 readings to extend this date further?
To be safe, I would say yes. I mean, we could make an argument that an extension of the ordinance would rise to the level of an emergency ordinance. I'd prefer not to have to rely on that line of thinking. And so, yeah, 2 readings plus 10 days to be effective. So to be safe, ballpark 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see the version with the sunset in here. Originally, you know, when we gave direction to draft this ordinance, I had voted in opposition because I thought it was pretty out of sync with where our residents were at, even though I understand the logic behind it. But I think the sunset addresses my primary concern, which was that, yeah, this is going to be, I think there will be difficult conversations here. We've already had folks bringing up some, legitimate concerns. Wherever we land on this, there will be debate. And in that case, in some cases, it's very easy for elected officials just to run for the hills. And I would think that not acting on this would be disrespectful to the will of the overwhelming majority of our voters. Mm-hmm. So the sunset provision, it's not just a deadline for us to get it together by, it's to ensure that this commission has to address it. Even if that means extending the sunset, we're still saying we're not passing a prohibition. We're giving ourselves time, just like we said, as opposed to having an ordinance that then a future commission would have to take action to repeal and could very easily just sit on their hands and not act on. So I'm comfortable with the version with the July 1st sunset, so I'll move for approval on first reading.
Motion by Commissioner Dubuck. We have a second by Commissioner Perush. Further discussion?
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson indicated that I may have misspoken. We're talking not about medical marijuana here, but we're talking about recreational or adult use marijuana.
Commissioner Macy?
So I'm still in the same place that I was when we discussed this before. I'm going to be voting against this motion. I still feel like it shows that we're out of sync. I think the messaging we're sending is entirely wrong based on what the message that we received from the voters. Already we're seeing all over the press that we have banned use of marijuana, despite the fact that this ordinance is coming before us for the first time tonight. So the fact that already that message is out there, passing this tonight, when we don't actually have to act for 10 months from now, I think it's just unbelievably premature. We could wait 6 months from now and still get this passed within a month and have many months to spare. So I think it's sending a message to our staff that we don't think this is urgent. I think it's sending a message to the people who voted for this that we aren't listening to them. And I think it's sending a message to people who are looking about where they're going to establish their businesses that we're not open for business in Royal Oak and you need to go to the surrounding communities, almost all of which have in fact indicated that they are going to allow this already. And I think we should take a lesson from Pontiac where there was, and this is ingrained in the law, that someone can start a petition for a referendum wherein the citizens would get to put on the ballot and then decide via referendum how many of these establishments we want to allow in Royal Oak, thus taking the decision out of the hands of this body and putting it in the hands of people who have different motivations than we might and will not have taken into account what we are hoping to take into account over the time that we're looking at this and doing the community engagement. So I applaud the community engagement. I applaud being careful and slow about this. I don't think we should be passing the opposite ordinance right now, but I do think that we should be looking into that and not spending time on this way in advance and sending the wrong message to our voters and to everyone else.
Anybody else? Okay. Commissioner Gibbs.
This is just for establishments. This is not for personal carry, this ordinance. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. We have no authority to regulate personal carry outside of the provisions that are in the state law.
Right, okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion passes. All right. This brings us to, where am I at? Item number 14, which is the Planning Commission recommendation on conditional rezoning of 414 Oakland. First reading. Mr. Hedges?
Yes, good evening. Before you this evening is a recommendation from the Planning Commission to conditionally rezone 414 Oakland Avenue from one-family residential to multiple-family residential. It's to allow construction of 10 multiple-family dwelling units within 2 separate buildings. This property has previously been rezoned to multiple-family before in 2015. That project involved 3 dwelling units. However, the developer did not proceed through to construction, and the approvals for that project lapsed. I believe the architect and developer is in the audience this evening. If you have any specific questions regarding the project, or I could try to answer those if you have any questions regarding it.
Any questions for Mr. Hedges? Questions for Mr. Hedges? Any questions in general?
Sure, why not?
Commissioner Lavasser, thank you.
I presume this is, this site currently is vacant lots?
Gentlemen, you can approach. We'll open it up to you if you're so willing.
Yeah, the property is vacant and has been for even since 2014 when we were first approached.
Okay.
There've been no structures on it. There's currently just a driveway, concrete driveway.
Thank you very much. So right now, to the east, you have some multifamily apartment buildings. To the west, you have a single-family home, and then the road kind of wraps around and kind of parallels the railroad track. The single-family homes, what I'm kind of concerned about, how tight to the lot line you anticipate this being, whether there's going to be sufficient buffer for their comfort.
We intentionally put the building to the east side of the property line, so there would be with the buffer zone of the driveway and their backyards. So there's quite a distance between our 30-foot building and their homes.
I take there's some things you can do to minimize any light overflow from your parking lot into their home?
That's ordinance, yes. We're not allowed to have any light go from our property to theirs. Of course, there's but yes, that's regulated by city ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for the petitioners while they're here? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. So, Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to move approval of the conditional rezoning.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion?
As we've seen developments spring up around Royal Oak, one of the issues we face is the number of parking spaces per unit. We're seeing many smaller units where the studies say that we can have fewer than the usual 2 parking spaces, and yet this development does deliver 2 parking spaces for every unit. The developer responded to the Planning Commission's concerns. They did not initially propose a wall or screening fence, and we did ask them to install a screening fence along the east edge of the property, at least up to along an existing adjacent apartment building. The multifamily use here is very consistent with what you see around it. You've got multifamily to the south, you've got an apartment building a couple doors east, you've got condos just north of it. And in fact, a similar project to this one has also been proposed just a couple of addresses away. The target market analysis that the city conducted here a couple of years ago supports the need for multifamily dwellings, especially in units of this size. So it's very consistent with what we see are the needs of the community, and it's a good project.
At risk of breaking protocol, any questions for Commissioner Douglas as the? No? Okay. Commissioner Macy?
So I'm, what you just said about the target market analysis, we talked about that also strategic planning about the hope of this commission to maybe have a more diverse housing market. And I guess I wanted to hear a little bit more about how you think this meets these needs, and also what the price point of these is going to be, if you know.
I forget.
Yeah, I should have asked.
But the target market analysis shows continued demand for rental housing in Royal Oak and for apartments, units in smaller buildings. Here we have 10 units in this. So those are two of the elements that, and the market supports fairly high rents. These units are a little bit larger than some of the other ones we've seen. Some of the other ones have been really micro units, studios in one bedrooms, therefore supporting a lower parking requirement because of the smaller units. But here we have a little bit bigger units with a 2-car garage.
And so the market may support the higher rents, but I think part of what this body wants to do is to have a more diverse housing stock, and I'm just wondering, it's your fault for bringing it up in the target market analysis.
No, I absolutely agree, but right now we have no regulations in place to support diversity beyond what the market demands, which is why we have in our strategic plan a housing study that goes beyond a market analysis to sort of looking at long-term demographic needs.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the table. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, gentlemen. Good luck. Remember about those contingencies. All right. This brings us to item number 15, the approval of final strategic plan for fiscal year 19 and 20. Mr. Curzon, how nice to see you again.
Good evening. At the January 14th commission meeting, a subcommittee was assigned the task of refining the final strategic planning document to bring it back for approval. On January 25th, this subcommittee met and discussed and worked and refined the document. In brief, the changes focused on the elimination of measures for individual action steps in favor of measures for the goals and for targets for specific objectives. There was some refining with action steps being moved around under different objectives as well. The biggest change you might note is that there were 3 objectives being proposed to be added to the document. These are to increase engagement with neighborhood associations, to support the work of the Senior Services Task Force, and to resolve issues related to adult use recreational marijuana in the city. These in the document are actually typed in red so that you can easily reference them. The document is ready for your approval.
We have any questions for Mr. Curzon? How about from the committee? Any comments?
As he pointed out, we specifically added language that was not part of our discussions as a group. So, you know, that's open to your vote. But we did feel that we should add the Senior Services Aging in Place Task Force into the plan, since it's already being done and will be worked on in years after this one. And we also actually, The marijuana issue started out under the goal, under the community engagement goal, and while we know that's an interdisciplinary subject that will have a lot of community engagement involved with it, we moved it into the last goal, goal number 7, which is more about public safety and protection. It just felt like a better fit there. We also moved the housing topic, which was under the neighborhood goal, into the economic development goal, number 5. Again, it just felt like a better fit there. Another measure of success that we came up with, again, open for debate, is how do you measure the efforts, community engagement efforts? And a standard that we thought might be relevant was reducing staff time on phones. That is, if we're doing a good job in our public communications, it frees up staff time from phone calls and therefore increases staff efficiency. A crucial element of this that is still not as specific as I might like, but I can live with it, and that is the requirement that we do collect customer and employee satisfaction data. And we've left it to the staff to figure out how to go about that, and given them some time to develop methods, but we feel we need quantitative measures of performance in those 2 areas. And we need to decide how we're going to measure it, establish some benchmarks, and then over time measure our progress against those numbers. So those are the sort of more sweeping changes.
Commissioner Macy.
So ditto everything that, except I think I disagree about having added objectives that weren't part of our discussion. I think our discussion, the subcommittee's discussion, was that these were things that we had talked about but hadn't in fact made their way into the plan.
Right.
And so,
yeah.
Questions for the committee? Commissioner Prush.
I don't have any questions for the committee, but given the fact that it's 11:15, I will move approval of this with the comment that this is great work, really, really great work. I appreciate the fact that you put in all the extra time. It's very easy to read, it's very clear, it's set forward in a way that we can understand, the staff can understand, the public can understand. I think this is great. So I think it's time to approve it and get it going.
A motion by Commissioner Prush, support by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion?
Thank you, and thanks to James. He did a great job.
Yeah, he did. So this is, as you might have noticed, this document is attachment 1 and attachment 2. And attachment 1 is the version we were using before without the pretty formatting, and attachment 2 is the version with the pretty formatting. I am pro pretty formatting, in case you can't tell, but I think we only need one in either case.
Are you asking that we have to pick?
I'm just saying, so like the resolution says adopting this document. I don't think we need the document with both sets involved.
Okay. So moving forward as a tool, we'll use the pretty formatting one.
Yes, thank you.
It's technically defined as pretty formatting.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We have a strategic plan, unanimous. All right.
So pretty.
This brings us to item number 16, which is request to join the American Association of Retired Persons Age-Friendly Communities Program.
Yes, to prepare for the forecasted growth in the senior population, the Senior Services Task Force is recommending that Royal Oak joins the AARP's Age-Friendly Communities Program. And this program utilizes extensive community engagement to assess the city services, city design, based on the 8-domain model. And the idea is to assess and plan for improvements over the next 5 years within the city. So the first step to this is to apply for membership. The application was attached to the commission agenda, as well as the official resolution of support that the task force had put together.
Any questions? Commissioner Douglas?
I will move approval of the resolution.
A motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion?
I just quickly want to add that there will be a number of feedback sessions essential part of this process. And we will be looking for city commissioners and planning commissioners to serve as small group facilitators. So you will get a notice at some point, and there will be training attached with it if you haven't never done public group facilitation. So it's a little skill building and a chance to really connect on a one-to-one or one-to-few basis with not just seniors, but people who will be seniors someday.
Including us.
Hopefully.
We hope, yeah.
All right, well, I'll call for the vote. There's no other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right, this brings us to item number 17, Senior Services Aging in Place Task Force update as requested by Commissioner Dubuc, Mayor Fournier, and Commissioner Macy. Commissioner Dubuc. Commissioner Macy.
So, yeah, I had requested this item just because there's, I think, been repeated requests to get updated on, what exactly the task force is focusing on. When we established it last year, it was in recognition of our need to not just meet needs on a daily basis, but identify meaningful strategies going forward to meet the growing senior population. So I think what we just talked about, the Age-Friendly Communities Program will help, but we did have a specific directive for the task force on housing options, transportation, and community engagement for seniors. So just thought, because the question's been raised, we should probably get an update as to the progress on the task force.
Commissioner Dubuc, is it your anticipation that we get a update tonight, or are we directing to get an update to bring back to the task force?
I think Commissioner Douglas might have a few notes, no?
Well, the age-friendly communities process is a multi-year process, and it's really looking at comprehensive changes across city departments. It's not just, another bus trip to the Stratford Festival. It will affect, as Mr. Kazan said, multiple domains: public safety, buildings, housing, transportation, health. It's a very comprehensive thing that will be integrated into really all city functions. But that doesn't mean that we don't have really great senior services now. I've heard that our Parks and Rec and Seniors Committee has a bunch of very interested, keen people on it. We've appointed, as I understand it, a senior citizen to that, and I expect her to be a strong advocate that committee spends some time on. As has been said, low-hanging fruit. Are there immediate needs that they and the city can address? We have, when people say we don't communicate about our senior services, I was going to bring a copy of it. We have a quarterly magazine that is packed with information about senior programs and senior services. And I don't know, I read it every quarter. I mean, it's just got tons of information. And I also want to register praise for Paige Jimbarski, who's our senior services director. She has worked in this industry for decades. She knows the subject matter. She knows her customers, the people who come to the senior center. And I have a lot of faith in her ability to understand the needs of, current needs of, immediate needs of seniors, and to deliver the services that they want.
Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on that because we, at Parks and Rec and Senior Advisory Board meeting this last week, we had Paige report to us about the senior center update. And her report was that things are going well. They're moving on some improvements. One thing they're talking about a lot is a fitness center. It was kind of on their wish list. And so I had met with her earlier in the year, and she is looking at getting some quotes on getting some equipment in, thinking about how they could move some things around to maybe put something in there. But she reported that she occasionally hears some complaints about communication and some complaints about senior services, but her impression overall is that people are generally happy with communication and with senior services. And her experience, having done this for 30 years, both in Royal Oak and elsewhere, is that we do in fact provide quite a lot and people are generally happy with it. That said, I just also heard from Judy Davids, the community engagement specialist, that we are going to be doing a push with some information that's specifically oriented towards seniors and things that they could use around their home, including the File of Life and the lockbox. So the File of Life is this little medical thing you can put on your fridge. It's like a magnet that has your medical information. So if there's an emergency and emergency responders come, they know to look for that, and then they'll have your information right there. And then the lockbox is something you can put on the outside of your house. And you've probably heard this at public comment many times. In any case, there's going to be a push about information about that. And as Commissioner Douglas mentioned, the Parks and Rec and Senior Advisory Board is very energetic right now. It's more new members than established members, and even the established members, like I've only been there a year. So there's a lot of energy, and one of the first things that we're gonna do is we're starting to try every month to get out into the community and to meet with people, and our first one will be in March. We'll be at the Senior Center. We're gonna do like a coffee and bagels and invite people to come talk to us and give us ideas for things that they'd like to see improved.
Awesome. Commissioner Perush.
Royal Oak has a very long history of dealing with senior issues, and you can kind of look back over the history of it and see how it has come forward in phases. I mean, when the first senior center was established in Royal Oak, it was in the Oddfellows Hall on 11 Mile, and the only thing that happened was that they served lunch and then had some meals on wheels that kind of went randomly out into the community. It was a very unstructured program, and that's all they did was provide lunch. There were no other programs, there were no other, nothing. But it was an opportunity for seniors who needed that nutrition assistance to get some assistance. But that was a very long time ago. Then over the next course of maybe 10 years or so, the community realized that the seniors needed a lot more support services beyond just one meal a day. And it gave rise to a big push for another senior center somewhere in the community that was independent and concentrated and focused just on senior issues, and was big enough to handle all different types of services and support services for various senior populations, which led the community to consider, okay, if we need a senior center and want one, where do we put it? Do we put it in an old building? And there was a big push for a long time to put it in the old Barton Junior High School, which is no longer there. Now it's Barton Towers. Or to build it in another location that would be more modern, more handicapped accessible, and so on, which led to the proposal to put it where it is now. Ultimately, big debate, big community, back and forth. Community decided to go with the location where it is now. And the people who supported the funds and raising the funds for that center were Harold Meininger and Leo Mahaney, who were also very active in the senior community in terms of providing tax assistance in the spring and so on and so forth. So, and it's been very, very, very successful. We've had wonderful operators and managers like Paige over the course of the years who've just done extraordinary work. It seems now we've been comfortable with that setting for a period of maybe 20 years or so now, 30 years. And it seems like now we're moving into yet another phase where not necessarily we're going to be building yet another center or a much larger center, because we've got an annex down at the Boys and Girls Club, but it seems like we're moving into a phase where senior issues are changing a little bit. They're more mobile, they have cars, they're living longer, the services that they need are different. And so I think the fact that we have a new group of people on the Parks and Rec and Seniors Committee who are going to be dealing with those issues on a monthly basis, as opposed to waiting for a 2 or 3 year study to come to fruition, is fantastic. Because I just get a sense that we're moving into, or we're in another phase of we need to take another hard look at whether or not we're providing all the services that we can for seniors in our community. We know we're limited. We know we can't do everything. We can't fix everybody's health problem. We can't make sure that everybody has 3 meals a day. We can't make sure that everybody's sidewalks are shoveled as much as we try. But I think we're moving into a new phase where we're taking another close look at what we're providing, both at the micro level and at the macro level. And I think that's very good. I think it's time. It's time to be doing that. So I think this is a great 2-step process. Not only this with the task force, but also the stuff that the advisory committee is doing on a day-to-day basis.
Anything else to report? No, I think that, I mean, I think our strategic task force is doing what it's supposed to be doing. I like how, you know, we're seeing the focus on services, but also, like Commissioner Douglas said, it transcends into something bigger and broader as we start to look and evolve as a community and plan as a community. And certainly the evolution, I mean, this is something that's in our DNA in Royal Oak to continue to advance the ball when it comes to the needs of our constituents. So, good updates. And I'm hyper motivated about, you know, the Parks Committee doing what you're gonna do and get out to the public and talk and engage. And, I mean, data's good, information good, surveys are good, but some of the best ideas are learned just by hanging out and having a cup of coffee and really finding that thing that, you know, isn't so transparent in all the information that we have from all the experts and everything. So kudos to the Parks and Rec Committee and your leadership, Melanie. All right. Anything else on this topic? If not, I think our work is done here for tonight, almost tomorrow. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas, second by Commissioner Gibbs. Any lengthy discussion on this motion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Adjourned.